recorded in the pits of Detroit, Michigan. Your ass is listening to Radio Underground. Shit.
Radio Underground. And we're here again this week. We're going to talk about some pro wrestling. With me always is Pine and Stones.
Hi. Yep, we're one short today.
Yep, Kojak had other engagements. That means partying, which is fine.
So somebody's going to have to pull a little extra weight and be extra disruptive and loud.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to piss off Lord Deathspit so that he can yell at me.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, and me personally, I don't remember Kojak really watching a whole lot of wrestling.
No, I think to be fair to him, I think when I put it out there that we're doing pro wrestling this week, I think he's probably like, nah, I'm going to just party.
Yeah.
Because he was not into it like we are.
We'll
get back to gaming and shit, and he'll be back, but...
Yeah, he's got to have something he can get worked up over and throw his 2 cents in.
Yeah, it's like, it'd be like doing a podcast on fucking Netflix Marvel shows that I don't watch. I wouldn't even fucking want to be here.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't either, to be honest.
It's my house,
so,
and I wouldn't want to be here.
I
would just leave and let you guys do it.
Sorry, nerds. We're never going to cover Netflix Marvel shows. We don't care that The Punisher got canceled.
They all got canceled. There's nothing left.
Yeah, well, that was the last one, though, wasn't it?
Well,
Green
still
Arrow.
Jessica Jones.
What's the one? I don't even know who. I always thought that was just the actress's name. I don't even.
No.
I always get it mixed up with that fucking Renee Zellweger where she plays a fucking Brit. What's that? Jessica? Is that Jessica?
Bridget Jones?
Bridget
Bridget
Okay.
Jones.
Whatever. Same difference.
No,
Same
the chick that
difference
played
to me.
Jessica Jones was from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that could have been her name. I don't even remember her name on Breaking Bad.
It's
I forget.
something.
I know she OD'd.
Kristen Ritter.
Yeah. Oh, is she John Ritter's kid?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just automatically, that's how I remember it. I think of John
His
Ritter.
daughter is in the entertainment industry, though. I've seen her.
His daughter is?
No,
I know his son
I don't
is.
know. I'm making
His son's
it up.
in.
I don't
Yeah.
Well, she's not in any canceled Netflix shows, so.
No. But anyways.
All right. So we're going to talk about pro wrestling in particular. Of course, we're going to go off into the old stuff. But it peaked, in my opinion, during the Monday Night Wars. That's when I really got into it. Of course, we all did the Hulk Hogan thing and the Ultimate Warrior thing before the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah.
But this is, to me, when I was fully cognizant of what was going on, and I knew it was not real and all that, and still enter. If you know going in that it's a stage and you still get invested, that's good content to me.
Yeah. It's the male soap opera, basically.
Exactly.
I don't know that there was ever a point that I didn't know it was staged. I'm sure when I was like 6, I might not have realized it, but I remember pretty early on always knowing that it was a
12.
work. But it was like I always viewed it when I was a kid, and I guess still today, not so much as a soap opera. I think, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because obviously that, to me, when the Monday Night Wars thing started happening, that was there was a paradigm shift where it became the male soap opera. Prior to that, I always kind of viewed it more as like a comic book come to life.
It was,
you know what I mean?
definitely.
You know,
Well, the old WWF, and that's what I'm calling it, I don't care. The old WWF stuff did have those larger-than-life comic book type people.
Their gimmicks were very comic over the top.
I mean, when you look at The Undertaker or Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, or even Tatanka, we were just talking about, these are ridiculous characters.
Hillbilly Jim.
And oftentimes
just a redneck.
They oftentimes they represented like a culture that like nowadays you could never get away with it ever.
Oh my God, Mr. Fuji.
Could you imagine trying to do a Akeem now?
Or
a big white guy being yo, what up, your soul, brother?
Or the Iron Sheik trying to do something like that now. Yeah. It's like, no,
you couldn't do it. You could not do it. We're watching botches right now, too, while this is all going. But anyway, the Monday night era started Well, Monday Nitro started in September of 1995, but to me, the war really started. Bash at the Beach, we watched the video.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan turns heel. He does the leg drop on Randy Savage. People are throwing shit in the ring. But the following Monday, in my opinion, that is when it started. Because that was like a Saturday. You know how pay-per-views were always a Saturday. But that Monday after, the NWO put it on the map. And I thought it was a freaking awesome time for entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we watched the most, obviously.
We did.
Every single week, watch both shows.
Yeah, we would go, me and you would go to, even though we're cousins, we went to my other family, my other grandma's house.
Yeah.
And we watched it every single week. And we switched back and forth to the between the two shows. And when they were both at their peak, I preferred WCW, but they both were really good. And then I think Stone Cold kind of really took over at some point. But, you know, and then WWF like ruled. But for a while there, I thought WCW was better. In my opinion.
I think most people. I mean, they would advertise it on every episode about how 84 weeks in a row we beat them in the ratings, which is true. They beat them in the ratings for a year and a half straight. Mm-hmm. It was the more popular show. It just.
I felt like when Hall and Nash defected and obviously showed up kind of unscripted in the crowd, that was obviously kind of the turning point for WCW, and I feel like the NWO, and I could be botching this because my memory's hazy. I felt like that was WCW's answer to Stone Cold Steve Austin. I remember kind of right around that time before the NWO came into it. The WWF had started to kind of play around with swear words and stuff like that. I even remember the Ultimate Warrior when he made his comeback, and I remember him like having like a little feud with Goldust, and like in the middle of the ring on Saturday morning, he said something like, "I don't give a shit what you're into," and they had to bleep it.
Yeah,
and he was saying ass and stuff like that. So they were kind of, and then with Stone Cold, they were kind of trying to market more toward the same audience that they had. They were trying to maintain that audience that they had throughout the 80s that was getting older.
Yeah. Yep.
And go ahead.
And during that era, though, when they started to they wanted to separate themselves from WCW. They stole from the third party, the ECW. They went for the more edgy, extreme thing. ECW was around 95, 96. They were already around.
Oh yeah.
And then so they didn't have the big TV audience. So like Vince McMahon flat out took that, and people can shit on I see a lot of the Cornette and a lot of these people shit on ECW, and some of their points are valid, but you cannot deny that ECW did not influence the WWF to be more hardline and more edgy.
Where did Stone Cold come from? Granted, yeah, he was stunning Steve Austin back in WCW in the 80s and early 90s, but his character was kind of developed in ECW before he was a WWF guy. Yep. So that whole, I don't give a shit, like I'm not a good guy or a bad guy, I'm just, a hard ass, that swears, and I don't give a shit about the rules, and there's, cursing and flipping people off and drinking and all that. And I think that was a huge part of like the paradigm shift, right?
Yeah, it was.
But I think what wound up happening toward the end of the Monday Night Wars when WCW, there was two things that happened. I feel like The Rock was like that second big star alongside Stone Cold that helped push the WWF over, and then at the same time you had too many cooks in the kitchen at WCW. Too many of the old schoolers trying to call the shots, pushing the.
So you're talking about, you're getting into the descent of things, and we'll get to that.
Right. Yeah, I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah, but you're 100% right, 100%. My thing was, I just wanted to get into the kind of how it by. We can't do step by step.
We're gonna try to do it chronologically.
I don't have notes.
Right,
obviously, right. I'm going to be totally off. I'm just saying we don't want to go to the end till the end.
right.
I have notes. I have notes because I forgot so much shit. So
yeah,
I had to look up stuff to make sure it was actually real in my mind.
So it started out, the NWO was just Hall, Nash, and Hogan.
Yeah,
and that was a hot thing. I was like sold on it, and I enjoyed it. And remember, it seemed like for a whole like year The NWO didn't lose a single match. They just kept
No.
beating everybody up. Hook or crook, they always won.
Yeah.
And no one could even, not even Sting would get a win.
No, and you're right. The Hogan thing is really what put them over, but it even started because Starrcade's what, like July usually. It's like the middle of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But even before that, when you talked about the defection, where they just showed up at the show,
Yeah.
that was where they started winning the ratings war. That was the first time.
Started then winning? Okay.
Yeah, it was like early June of '96, and I think the Hogan thing was July.
If you're going to correct me, get out.
So we have one guy on the
you're right.
podcast that does his research
but it was
before
like
every
to the
episode.
point where it's close. But Hogan put them completely over the top. Like
He did. Well, I know. Like I said, I don't have actual notes of how everything went, but yeah, that's awesome.
detailed notes, 3 pages of notes.
Yeah, I
Did you
can
really?
always tell that you're prepared for every episode that we do.
Not every.
Well,
No,
the last couple.
I
anyway.
literally had stuff like I'm like, didn't this happen before? And I had to look it up because
Right.
Because we were even watching, though, the pre-Monday Night Wars. We were watching, like, Paul White, the Giant, falling off the fucking Cobo Hall here in Detroit.
we were
were
into
wa-
the river. Which
Yeah, he
is-
falling and anybody that's
impossible.
been there know if you fall off, you don't fall into the river. You're going to hit cement.
Yeah, there's
the
a
river's
street-
like 100 feet fucking away.
There's
from
a road in between the stadium and the river. You're not. Yeah,
Yeah, the Giant didn't fall into the river.
no, that was the best though. 'Cause remember, it's like
Did
it
the-
shows him being thrown off. I
Did
fell
The
off, and
Rock
then-
have something to do with that?
No. That was the WWF did their someone throwing in the fall.
Oh, you're talking about back in the WCW days, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking. This is
See,
before
I'm
Monday
getting- I'm
Night
getting all
Wars.
screwed
Now,
up
you're
here.
talking about when The Rock and Stone Cold had a confrontation on the Belle Isle Bridge,
Right.
and then
That's right.
he beats Stone Cold up, throws him into the Detroit River.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
which is that undertow
Now, if anyone that goes in that river dies, except Houdini made it.
somehow.
Houdini made it out of it.
But
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, the Monday Night Wars were real hot, and then they led forever. Remember they had then they tried like the Mortal Kombat type shit with Wrath and Glacier and
gosh, yeah.
Mortis.
oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
they had so many bad ones though.
And it's weird how there was like kind of multiple things going on, and they had the NWO over Sting and everything, and then they had they tried to do the Mortal Kombat thing, which they just kind of got rid of after.
How
like,
much of that?
Glacier's still wrestling as Glacier.
is he really?
I mean, what 2 years ago or something? When I saw this thing, he was still wrestling.
How much of that was? I mean, Glacier. Obviously, he had the mask. The whole Sub-Zero thing's pretty undeniable. But when you talk about like Wrath and Mortis and these guys, I always kind of looked at Mortis, even though we all know, Chris Canyon. I always kind of looked at
Wait,
him.
what?
Wasn't he kind of teamed up with La Parka? I always felt that was more of like the luchador influence. With the
I
masked
thought
wrestlers.
they were going straight Mortal Kombat.
I mean, I think it was both. I think it was a luchador thing, but the Mortal Kombat movie was out around the same time.
Sure, but like the Wrath thing, he was pretty much Adam Bomb. He
Yeah,
was the same
that's-
character
Well, it was the same
without
guy,
the
yeah.
goggles.
By the way, his shoot interviews, that guy, he when he talks shit about people, he's really good. Like when you talk, like he hates everybody. He hates. Or when he was in WWF, like back when it was like Nash, Hall, and Levesque, who is now Triple H, and
Yeah.
well, he was always Triple H, but I mean, he's like the fucking borderline owner now, right?
Like when he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Yeah, and
still.
there was all them guys, and they ruled the place. They dictated everything. They'd get people fired. Man, he hates fucking Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Oh my God, does he? Because remember, he went on a winning streak himself in WCW,
Right.
and Kevin Nash was the guy to break it.
I kind of forgot about that. Yeah.
Kevin Nash was also the guy that broke Goldberg's,
Right.
Which we got to get into Goldberg actually before we get it. But
I feel like, not to cut you off or to jump ahead, but that whole thing I viewed when Nash broke Wrath's streak. It was pretty. They were spelling it out because I remember when we were watching. Well, I guess shit, man. Now I feel like I'm kind of jumping right into the Goldberg thing, but like obviously Goldberg was like WCW's answer to the NWO. Here's this fucking unbeatable, fucking monster who's just and he kind of like Stone Cold, but not really. He didn't have much to say because he was shitty behind the mic, so he wasn't doing the cursing thing and that. But he was like this, not really a good guy, not really a bad guy, unstoppable,
just there for himself.
Yeah, and he was gonna take the NWO apart and whatever. And then there was the question of who's going to stop this guy. And my money was on Nash from the beginning, that they're going to hype, that's the one guy that would be kind of believable. Nash was always
Due to the size,
one of the top build guys. And then when he beat Wrath, it's like, okay, they're spelling it out. He's going to be the streak breaker. They're having him do that specifically to show you that, yeah, he can beat these unstoppable guys.
Yeah, and I guess the guys had a problem with Nash doing it because Nash, he was the booker.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with him breaking Wrath's streak, to be honest. Maybe Goldberg's to a point because Goldberg's was like much longer. But I think they fucked up with Wrath. I really did because that guy was getting crowd response.
Yeah.
And I'm not just going based on, I remember, I wanted to see that guy go out there and do his thing. I mean, I was like, this is a big guy. He was believable. He had a look. He had the, how as Adam Bomb, he had the freaking yellow eyes.
Yeah.
But as himself, the dude's, got really ice, freakishly ice blue eyes. He has this intimidating, almost like the guy that was the bad guy from Cyborg, the movie.
Yeah.
And he's also in Point Break. That guy's
Surfer
eyes.
guy.
He had that kind of
Yeah, Warchild.
Warchild or Bender, as he was called. Fender Tremolo.
Yeah,
That's his name. I swear to
They
God.
were all named after guitar shit.
Yeah, and you look at the
It's
names of the
Cyborg.
gang. Anybody go watch the 1988 film with Van Damme? The band, pirate gang is all named after
It was,
guitars.
oh my God. It was so
Stupid.
great.
But yeah, anyway, I don't think it.
You made me think of something, though, when you said his ice blue eyes, just Dean Malenko's eyes of ice or whatever.
Eyes of Ice.
Dude, his eyes were black.
Well, he was the Iceman.
I don't care. He didn't have eyes of ice.
Did he say he had eyes of ice?
Yeah, they
I
had
don't-
a shirt and it just showed his fucking eyes.
Well, I think that had more to do with his stare, not the color of his eyes. He,
I was
he
just like-
he
I
was
just-
blank faced because he was
I
really no
hated Dean
personality,
Malenko.
so they had to do the best they could, and market him as somebody,
Mike Awesome. We're watching Mike Awesome videos. The fat chick.
That chick thriller.
That's the guy. That's another guy I think they misused. He was really big and he could do flips and everything off the rope. And
Yeah.
they didn't do anything with Mike Awesome.
No.
Nope.
Well, that was the thing,
And he's Hulk Hogan's related to him, by the way.
I did not
Oh,
know
I
that.
didn't know that.
Yeah, he's. I think he's his nephew.
Really?
Yeah.
Was.
Well, yeah, he's dead too. So many of them. Are
But
gone.
I mean, and I mean, I don't know if you want to go here, but that's one of the things that wound up, like I said. I mean, the mismanagement.
Yeah.
And look, here's the bottom line. Even though WCW, for a good long while, did have the WWE's number in terms of winning in the ratings war.
Yep.
Because they had all these big name wrestlers. They had a lot going for them for a time.
and they had good stories too. And then but too many, like you said, too many people.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. They could not. There's no way for them to keep that momentum going because Ted Turner is not Vince McMahon. Okay, Vince McMahon, that was his life's work. That was his. It's in his family's blood to do the wrestling thing.
Well,
Ted Turner, it was just money.
Yeah.
Well, they had the Goldberg thing, and then I guess we'll start the incline towards the end, or somewhat.
I actually wanted to go to before
Okay, go ahead.
because
do
it
whatever
got me
the fuck we
thinking.
want.
It's how they really started. Because even when Bischoff came along and was made the vice president of WCW, he wasn't booking the fights. It was still Ole Anderson and
Yeah,
I can't think of his name. They were They were
he
doing
was
all
like
the-
91. He was around, wasn't it? Something. He was around a long time.
Who's that?
I remember Eric Bischoff was just an announcer.
Yeah.
He had the mic and
They made him the vice president like 93 or something like that.
yeah, but he was there for a while before he was
Yeah, at one
kind of
point-
what he became.
Well, I don't know about in WCW, but he worked for AWA, and he was just like a sales associate. He worked his way up, but he wasn't booking the fights or doing anything. It was only Anderson, and I cannot think who else was doing it.
Dusty
Yes, thank you, Dusty Rhodes. And,
Sullivan too.
Oh, and Sullivan. Yeah, I forgot about him. And they were still doing stuff like the '80s style, where they have these over the top comic gimmicks, and people were starting to get away from that. They wanted more realism.
Yeah, the Dungeon of Doom.
stuff like that. But then they had the whole I know you remember fondly Sting and Vader and the mini movies they made.
Oh yeah,
Like the White Castle of Fear.
yeah. Oh god, that was so good.
Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, where him and Jake Roberts have laser beams that are shooting at each other's eyes at each other. And then the best one was when him and Sid showed up on the island.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was Sting and Davey Boy on an island with some orphans for some reason.
Yep.
And they show up on their boat like, hey, if you guys just don't come to Bash at the Beach, we'll give you money. And they're like, no, we can't do it. And the orphans are like, yeah, it's great.
So
and then
bad.
he swam up to the boat with the shark fin on and put a bomb on the boat.
I remember.
He put a bomb on the boat, but somehow Davey Boy saved him from blowing up. That was the stuff that they were doing, and it wasn't working out at all. Some of those videos are the worst things you will ever see.
That must be the point at which I was just not watching at all because I don't remember any of that.
That was like 93.
Well, I checked out at that point.
And I barely watched it. I just remember those because I went back and watched them because Mike had watched them and told me about them. Like, these aren't real. There's no way. And they actually were real.
Yeah, they're
And
okay.
I didn't say dim. Sorry.
No, I think.
But then, when I think that was the turning point because the stuff wasn't doing well, and from what I understand, Bischoff was in charge, but he wasn't completely in charge.
Yeah.
And then after that, when Ted Turner's like, "Here's a blank check, start getting people," and they started getting people, and they somehow got Hogan and then Savage, and that's really what started building them back up. Was just those two initially.
Well, yeah, you're that era, like, and remember they had like the power plant,
where
they were like trying to recruit talent, and Billy Kidman was the guy that, like, was the guy that won. But do you know who was in that class with them? And he did really well, but he was like, I don't think this is for me. Chael P. Sonnen.
For real?
Chael Sonnen did the power plant and graduated, but he goes. You have to listen to his interview about it. Sonnen talks about it to, I think it was Vince Russo had him on.
Really?
And he made it through the power plant and everything. No, Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast.
Okay.
And Steve Austin's like, dude, you're 6'1". What are you when you don't got to cut weight? Like, what can you, if you were a wrestler, what could you get up to, like, and still move? He's like 230, 240. He's like, that's perfect, like, worker size, the Bret Harts, people like that. But he obviously, Sonnen can work a mic.
Oh God, yeah.
But he didn't do it. He didn't stick it out. But he did graduate from the power plant.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I mean, like there's a bunch of people that came out. Goldberg came out of the power plant.
Paul White, Big Show.
Yeah, because Paul. I remember reading Paul. The Big Show tried to get in by going to an autograph thing with the WWF and talking to a guy, and the guy's like, "Well, you're big, but hey, do you have any experience?" And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "Nope, we can't use you." It's like, what? He's 7 feet and 400 pounds. Use him for something.
Yeah.
And then that's when he ended up doing power plant stuff. But
yeah, then Goldberg, and then we'll get into the Goldberg thing. I remember he came along, and you see a lot of these wrestlers talk about how, like, he couldn't work for shit, and they kind of like you see the shoot interviews. A lot of the guys don't like him. I guess he's tough to do business with. But wrestling is about people, like, the believability. When I saw Goldberg, a 280-pound guy, do a backflip, there's believability there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care that, like, a 200-pound actual shoot wrestler could tie him up. To me, that didn't matter. Like, a 280-pound guy that looks like and then he could do backflips. I was like, well, shit, this guy's a badass.
Yo, no, we were fans.
Yeah, I think the thing with Goldberg was, like you just said, but here's the thing. There's another guy going back a little further that people say similar things about. Couldn't work. The guy sucked. He was stiff. Ultimate Warrior, right? So you had the Ultimate Warrior, and when you go back and look at the Ultimate Warrior's matches, what did he do? He's known for doing what? Running at fucking blistering speed to the ring, shaking the ropes, acting like a maniac, clotheslining people a few times, gorilla press, big splash. That's about it. He had no other abilities beyond those few things. And so, you at least with Goldberg, you had a guy like Mike just said he could do backflips. He could do, I don't know if I ever saw him do a moonsault or anything like that, but he was pretty athletic, pretty agile for such a big guy.
Yeah.
There was an era of believability to a lot of what he did. Now, some of that might have been what a lot of guys were pissed about because he wasn't just selling moves all the time. He actually would fucking there were times where he would actually hurt you. Bret Hart could attest to that.
Oh, yeah.
You do a fucking spinning fucking heel kick and actually clobber somebody with it. That's gonna. But he had the ability to throw those crazy kicks and punches and do those kind of some of the impressive power moves. Where Ultimate Warrior was a pretty strong guy. He could do the gorilla press slam and stuff. But Goldberg, there was a different level to it, and I think that was part of it as well. He had the speed, athleticism. There was a believability about him, and he looked just physically fucking terrifying.
Yes.
Well, they were talking about about 10 years later, Dave Bautista came along, and Goldberg was already like 40 or something at the time, and he went in. The people in the caption was, "People think Batista is like a big, strong guy." Goldberg goes in there and presses 320 at the time, 320-pound Dave Bautista over his head like he was nothing and just launched him.
Just natural physical.
And when he
strength.
went to the WWF, but Vince has this thing where if he didn't create you, he wants to be the one to like kill you. He does have that.
Yeah.
So he had to get Goldberg in there. He had to get all those guys. The only guy he didn't shit out because he was such a good talent. And he just took his licks and went with the flow, and Vince just liked him, was Booker T. Booker T went over and did very well for himself.
Jericho.
I was going to say
too,
Jericho, yeah. Because Jericho, he said, an interview I saw, he knew his contract was up in August of 99. And by December of 99, he was like, I don't care what they offer me. When my contract's up in 99, I am leaving WCW. And he did, because they told him the same thing. He's too small. He won't sell tickets.
Chris Jericho, in those days of the Monday Night Wars, Chris Jericho, he was like one of the most, if not the most, entertaining wrestlers in WCW.
Absolutely.
And he was by far the best on
Zero
the mic.
Big
Big enough
Exactly.
to handle some of the
Jerichoholics
heavyweights.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
I was a member.
He had Ralphus. Jericho, I remember when I first saw him years before the Monday Night War even, clearly was like a Shawn Michaels influence type, the long blonde hair, rocker style or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people will praise Shawn Michaels for his abilities and stuff. I think Jericho was always better than Shawn Michaels.
Oh, I think he's
by a lot.
Better on the mic, better in the ring, better at everything.
Better everything.
Yep.
And it's another shining example of wasted fucking talent by WCW. Not that they completely wasted him. They did not utilize him to his fullest potential, and the WWE totally fucking rolled with him. He became, how many times did he win titles and shit?
Oh, I know.
He was,
that's a perfect example of misuse, because he instantly went to WWE, sorry, and was a hit. Became a champ real quick. Was popular. It's just they wouldn't give him the push because he wasn't Nash or Hall or Hogan or these other guys in WCW. Even the Big Show, they wouldn't give him a push. He's the same way.
WCW, in my opinion, they were better, and at their peak for that couple years, they were better. But where they did fail is they still had that old school 80s mentality. You got to be big. You got to be 250 plus.
Every single new person they brought in was an old dude.
But they had a cruiserweight division. They had but they kind of separated them from the big guys.
Did.
Eddie Guerrero, all them. Eddie Guerrero kind of did. I'll say that him and Ray did the big guy fights.
Yeah,
but they had a division of guys that were all really good workers, and they just kind of kept them separate.
Yeah,
they never made them headliners. But
never.
Here's the thing, though. In their defense, and maybe I'll play devil's advocate here. How many cruiserweights and luchadors and shit did the WWF have at that time?
They didn't have any.
None.
No.
The smallest
Mexican
guy
wrestlers, the Japanese wrestlers, all those guys got their time in WCW.
Yeah,
that is true.
They got attention.
No, you're right, because
you had Ultimo Dragon, Rey Mysterio, fucking La Parka, all these Mexican and Japanese wrestlers were on Monday Nitro every fucking week.
In fact, to the point where when Invasion happened and they bought the company out and everything, WWE didn't even bring the cruiserweight division because they couldn't get the two top guys. They couldn't get Billy Kidman, or they got Billy Kidman, but they could not get Rey Mysterio to sign. So they did away with the entire cruiserweight division when they bought out WCW.
Then they made champions of Benoit and champion of Guerrero and why am I having a brain fart? Fucking Jericho. Jesus Christ.
That's and
help me.
Their big gripe is if you weren't one of those top 5 guys in WCW, you didn't get the push you deserved.
Right.
And WCW was more of a old school like wrestling type environment. The big WCW it was mostly pushed the big guys, but the WWF later they had just big guys through that whole time. But then Vince being the genius that he is, he took from ECW with the extreme shit, the cussing, the titties. There was flat out titties, like what was that? Sable.
Yeah.
Sable.
Brock Lesnar's wife. She did body paint.
Yeah,
and showed her titties. So that was stolen from the ECW, and then they incorporated the small guys and pushed them.
And they also they had Mick Foley. They had started incorporating all that hardcore shit. Of course, WCW. I think for a while, Sandman was part of the game and all that.
Yeah, but
in my opinion, though, when the Monday Night Wars were at their peak, you had two mindsets amongst fans. You had the fans that were like that were more the wrestling fans, people who appreciated the luchadors, people who appreciated like good wrestling, good wrestlers, and they didn't get the time that that some of us think they should have, but they got time.
That's
some
true.
time.
That's true. You're right. You're right.
And then in WWF, you had Undertaker sacrificing people on burning crosses and like people coming back from the dead, people stealing people's cars and fucking ridiculous shit. Storylines. You had the people that were interested in the story and the characters, and you had the people that were interested in the wrestling and the art.
Which you want to talk about the extreme shit?
Cause
I saw him, and you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I was like,
I'll let you tell it because we're on the same page and we saw it. And
I'm not looking at the TV.
I know I'm trying not to.
Are we talking about the Blastmaster or whatever?
No.
This isn't something funny. This is something.
No.
It's funny to us, but it was at the time very.
Nowadays they'd have been kicked off the air for this.
Brian Pillman and the gun.
Yeah. Well, that was the point because
I just saw Pillman on there.
That whole era
with a gun.
That whole era when they started getting more swearing and stuff, the Attitude Era, as they call it.
Right.
A lot of people were like, "Oh, the Attitude Era started with this," and me personally, I think Attitude Era started when Pillman, at his home, pulled a gun on Steve Austin. The funny thing is, they got so much backlash from the network about that. USA was all over Vince, like, we can't believe
they'd
you
be
put this on
kicked
the
off
air.
the network now.
But they approved it. The network approved it first, and then after they got backlash is when they're like, "Oh, you should have done this," because it was live. That wasn't taped.
Everybody loved it.
Everything else was
Everybody
taped,
loved it.
and that segment was live from his house.
Yeah.
And they said the problem was now we look back at it doesn't look realistic at all. But then it was more realistic than anything else they had on the entire night, so people complained about it. And it was in an hour and kids are still watching and stuff.
But look, I understand that there's horrible gun crimes and things. It's a divisive issue.
And
but if you think about it though, if a guy breaks in your house to beat your ass, as Stone Cold Steve Austin did, in America where guns are 100% legal, what would you do? Like a guy like Pillman that's got a temper and doesn't want someone and his wife was with him. Okay, so you got, because remember, Austin was...
And he was injured. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah, Austin wasn't quite a good guy yet, so it was Pillman. They were both kind of like shades of gray.
Yeah.
They're nuts. Like, they're both nuts. But Pillman had he's at his house. He's got his wife, kid, his dog. And this psycho redneck breaks through the door that used to be his friend to beat him up. For realism, two guys that are Americans where guns are legal, what would be the real outcome of that?
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Because I watched it again earlier because it was like my favorite thing ever. But
again, that's where I was talking about. There's the line that there's a clear separation from the viewing it as like a comic book come to life versus soap opera. Like that's the difference, and I feel like with I don't know, and my look, I smoked a lot of weed in those days, so my memory is a bit fuzzy as far as like who's doing what at what time. That's just kind of my takeaway from when I was in my heyday of wrestling fandom. in terms of the Monday Night War Attitude Era, whatever you want to call it, that's how I viewed WWF versus WCW. I preferred WCW because I don't give a fuck about soap operas.
Yeah.
I always hated them.
You just
I always
wanted
thought they
the
were
action.
fucking stupid.
You wanted
And
the
I hated
action.
the fucking stupid ass drawn. Yeah, WCW had stupid storylines too, but they had more wrestling was actually happening.
Oh, I agree.
There were actually matches, and I liked it when like Billy Kidman would try to do like a Hurricane Rana on somebody like fucking Reese and then get fucking thrown through the fucking tables and shit and like manhandled, and when it looked like people were actually getting fucking hurt. When La Parka would bring a fucking 10 chairs into the fucking ring and start smashing people. But there was actually good wrestling. It wasn't just ECW. Not to say that ECW didn't have good wrestlers. Obviously, Rob Van Dam.
They had
got
some
a whole
good,
fucking
they had some
host
good
of them.
workers, yeah.
But WCW did have superior talent. They just didn't manage it as well.
No, exactly.
well,
That's, I think, where ultimately I stand.
Everybody in that little documentary I watched said the same thing. Mismanagement the entire time. Not just with the booking, but the people they brought on and the money they gave the people and the public knowledge of the money they gave these people. Just everybody, like Big Show, the Giant was the champion, making $125,000 a year. Couldn't get a push, but he was the champion. But then they bring in
that's
they bring in
peanuts.
Bret Hart.
Even back then, that was peanuts.
That was nothing. Yeah. Then they bring in Bret Hart to do pretty much nothing for 2 years, and they gave him like $12 million.
Yeah, they were all about getting the names
Yeah.
there.
It was complete mismanagement.
And what a waste of talent. And like now I know Bret Hart, speaking of Bret Hart, I don't think it's even arguable that he's one of the greatest like workers of all time.
Oh, he was, yeah, for sure.
Like second to almost no one. Shit behind the mic. And
Terrible.
in that
Yeah.
era, you couldn't afford to be shit on the mic unless you were Goldberg. Like, me, strong, spear, yay, jackhammer. Like, that's what the fans wanted. They don't, you can't.
There's a certain type of guy that can be a non-mic
Right,
guy.
so, like, I was kind of crediting WCW for giving the luchadors and some of those more, like, seasoned wrestlers more out, giving them a chance. Bret Hart was never going to be one of those guys. You're not going to make him a mid-carder.
No,
you
Ever.
can't.
You can't. So what do? You've got this guy where he's in an era where it's crucial to either A, be great behind the mic, or B, be a solid wrestler. But you're going to be a mid-carder. You can't have this legendary name like Bret Hart come into your company
and not do
and
shit.
not
You
and
can't
be a
have that
mid-carder.
dichotomy
It's
at
just
all.
not going
It's
to
not gonna
fucking
work.
happen. But here we were. You know what I mean? So you got guys like Sting who were a similar ability to Bret Hart in terms of their like in-ring ability.
Yeah.
But Sting had
A gimmick.
and even when he was Surfer Dude Sting, he wasn't bad behind the mic. He wasn't the best, but he could get a crowd riled up.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he had a little bit more athletic ability than even Bret Hart, but Bret Hart worked better.
Well, Ric Flair
He could do
said
some of the
Ric Flair
kicks.
said on his podcast about Sting. He said this. He goes. He didn't have everything like that. Like a great mic guy could have or a great worker could have. He goes, but he had something about him where people just loved him. And he goes, if you had put Sting in the WWF during the bigger than life comic book thing, he goes, Sting would have been bigger than Hogan because people just loved him.
Yep.
Yeah.
He goes, because he was better on the mic than Jim Hellwig.
the Warrior.
By
That's not even
far
close.
better wrestler than Hogan, more moveset.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like in between those two. Hogan was better on the mic, but Flair's point was he could have, if he would have, he was a loyal guy. He could have. Vince McMahon tried to recruit him many times over the years, and Sting was a very much loyal to whoever he was working for. But Sting, if he would have went, he probably would have had Warrior spot and then been bigger than Hogan in any of them for a brief time. Maybe not forever, but for a brief
Probably
time.
for a long time. He could have really. He could have made a.
Because
a
kids,
bigger-
the
much
thing was,
bigger
kids
career
loved
for
him.
himself.
Kids
Yeah.
loved him.
Kids loved
That's
him.
everything. That's your money.
Kids loved him. He had a lot of in-ring ability. He was decent behind the mic. He was a good-looking guy. Like, he could have marketed himself in Hollywood had he been like big enough to. I don't know if he would have been good enough actor or not, but like he had a lot of potential. You could do a lot with Sting.
Handsome, check. Mike, check. In-ring ability, check. People loved him. He could have really done very well. In the WWF, when he was in his prime, it was years, remember, before the Monday Night Wars, years he was in even the NWA. It was called the NWA when he was over there.
Yep.
If that guy, you put him in the WWF, you don't need Hogan and you don't need Warrior. You got your hero. You got him. Younger than, you had everything.
No, I
but
agree.
he was a loyal guy,
I'm not unhappy with the way it turned out because
me
without
either.
him, WCW sinks long before
But
the Monday Night Wars.
Flair's point wasn't whose opinion's better than Flair's.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of like what he thought
Sure.
thought of somebody, and because he always thought, he goes, well, Steamboat had the ability, had all that, but Sting had that everything. And he could have been in that slot because remember they wanted to pass that torch when Hogan was getting older. The whole point of Warrior was you're now Hogan. And then they even tried Luger, remember?
yeah,
They
that
tried
my
to get,
God.
and that
fucking
flopped
failure.
miserably.
That's
Talk
another
about
one.
Mike skills.
That-
There's none.
That was Sting's spot. That was Sting's
Yeah.
spot to take, and he just wouldn't go.
I mean, at least the Warrior. When you talk about Lex Luger and the Ultimate Warrior, let's look at both those guys. Very similar, physique, very similar in-ring ability. Neither of the two were a phenomenal
No.
worker. They were both
Great
big
bodies, yeah.
bodybuilder dudes, right? That looked impressive. But at least the Warrior was fucking insane and crazy and had. You can say what you want about the Warrior. That fucking music, the entrance, he had one thing going for him, and that was the ability to fucking rile up a crowd in the context of the entrance. Dun, 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 dun. And then he'd come out like a goddamn gorilla on crack, shaking the fucking ropes,
yeah.
and he had his face painted all crazy, and then he would say all this insane fucking crazy intergalactic shit that you couldn't understand behind the mic. That was interesting. It was, and especially looking back, it's good to have a good chuckle at a lot of the crazy shit he said. Luger was, what did he do?
No, oh my
Nothing on
God.
that level.
No.
Luger was
His
just
talk was terrible.
a big, strong guy that was there for a paycheck.
Yeah, he was terrible.
And
on the
a
mic.
lot of people's problem with Luger, and that I'm not, according to me, according to the guys in the shoot interviews, that Luger, like Eric Bischoff said, he was a pro wrestler that wanted to be a football player. And he had his whole career embarrassed that he was a pro wrestler. Luger didn't really want to be a wrestler. It's just a job like how me and you, we do our job, right? Mm-hmm. I like my job, and he might have liked it, but you don't love it. It wasn't his passion to be a wrestler. Right. It was not an ambition of his. It's something because he was a big, muscular guy that he was just able to do. And that's pretty much everyone's opinion on Luger.
Yeah, it's just Luger sucked.
I mean, he was
a good wrestler.
When I remember when I was a kid, in the 80s and 90s, early 90s and stuff, in WCW, because when I was a kid, we all grew up, I think, first with the WWF, right?
Oh, God,
Macho
yeah.
Man, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, all those guys, right?
I still watch the other shit because I have rednecks in my family.
But right,
I watch NWA.
when I first discovered WCW, I was like, "Oh, there's these guys. Who the fuck are these guys?" But it was Luger, Sting, Flair. Really, those are the only three guys I can remember.
The Road
first.
Warriors.
Yep, the Road Warriors. Brian Pillman.
Flying Brian Pillman.
Yeah, Flying Brian. Z-Man.
Oh my God, Z-Man.
fucking yeah. And so those it didn't have the roster. It just didn't have the characters that the WWF had.
No, it didn't.
But it had enough of them to be at least interesting. And Luger was among them.
You know how you bring up Z-Man?
Yeah.
The
Yes.
guy Tom Zink, he had the first shoot type. He had a website, TomZink.com, where he talked mad shit about everyone he hated, and it was before all these shoot interviews and everything. I think he got sued so bad that he doesn't do shoot interviews. He won't even do them.
Really?
He got sued because he talked shit about everybody he hated, and on the people that he felt cock blocked him from stardom.
Dick
He
cock.
was we'll put the thing about the people he really hates. Absolutely hates Triple H. Hates him. Kevin Nash. A lot of people who are high up, he hates them. And he talked shit about him before it was cool. This isn't before. Yeah. This is before shoot. And I remember reading I was like, oh my God, that's how that guy really was. He hated Sid. all these guys.
Well, when you hate that many people.
Well, he was bitter. He was a bitter motherfucker.
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
no doubt.
it sounds like the problems when you put Sid and Triple H in the same fucking list of people you hate. Like that's look, Nash, Triple H, those guys that kind of call shots and got like privileges and shit. I get that. Like I get people hating them, but the bottom line is a lot of that hatred is jealousy or envy.
Sure, absolutely.
You know? If you were in that position, would you be any more moral or a better of a person?
No.
Absolutely not. You
Nope.
wouldn't.
You know
so fuck you.
The coolest people in all of wrestling, any shoot interview across, and they're the guys that could probably fuck up all of them, beat them all up for real. All the Polynesian guys, like the Samoans and Tongans, they like everybody. I like old Nash and I like old Hogan. They like, and they can actually like if it were a real fight, these guys are fucking people up. But they were like, and they were always like there to like do the work. They would get pinned, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that probably speaks to a cultural
that's their
difference
their
between
culture
a
is
Pacific Islander versus an American. You know,
Yeah.
ambitions are a little different.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like in their culture, you honor your elders or people who outrank you. Mm-hmm. So if they felt like if Haku, who was considered the toughest guy ever,
Yeah, I was going to bring up Haku.
Haku, even though he could kill them, he always viewed Flair and Hogan as people I got to protect and I got to look out for Hogan and Flair. They're like his chief in his mind because of the culture he comes from.
Because Haku was another guy. I don't remember him losing in WCW. He always won his fights, except Goldberg, yeah. But
Yeah,
and then he was just gone.
Well, they build him. They kind of build him. They build Meng as I kind of
Can't hurt him or
based
whatever.
on the reputation of Haku Tonga.
Yep.
If you want to go by his real name, you know, he obviously we all know he has that reputation for being like the most legit tough guy in all of the industry, right? And I felt like Meng was kind of the character that was supposed to be kind of a hyper. You know, he didn't really talk. He just, I'm crazy, tongue and death grip, you know, all that. But that was kind of that character was like, you can't even fucking hurt this guy. Even Goldberg, when he did beat him, like, didn't really, like, hurt him. Like,
No.
he just, so, and that's the thing. We all know Samoans are like, they got fucking granite in their fucking skull. You can't fucking hurt them.
No.
And then they are like some of the legit toughest people on earth.
Absolutely.
So before I can already see like the shit that I'm about to say is going to come off as mildly racist. So let me just stop and take a couple drinks before anybody misconstrues what I'm fucking saying here. And everybody who's listening to this, all five of you, you know what the fuck I'm saying. So fuck you.
yeah. Well, it's like they're tough, and then there's people like there's white people that are that way. The Icelandic people are bigger and stronger than we all are.
Yeah, but their fucking brains aren't built out of like fire hydrant material, like to
Yeah.
where.
That's true.
I'm just saying that like they're all like I think like the average Dane is like 6'1". It's like the tallest average person. Like they're really tall Nordic
Yeah,
people.
that's pretty.
Wait, hold on. Just a brief aside. Speaking of that, just reminded me of that fucking mashup video that somebody put out a couple months ago about with Joe Rogan. Like, imagine if chimps were there as many chimps as people, and then like he's just all of a sudden he's like, you can tell he's high out of his fucking mind to talk about Samoan babies with like fucking giant heads, fucking running through the streets, it's like chimps everywhere. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, things make
crazy.
sense to Joe that.
But
I don't know. I'm
but
not
it
on
makes
that
sense to me.
wavelength.
Like the whole Samoan, like dude, Samoans are fucking Islanders are tough as fuck. So
Yeah, they're definitely a different. I met one Pacific Islander in real life, and okay, we have this stuff. At my company, we deliver like carpet stuff. Well, this padding weighs, but depending on the roll, 180 to 220 pounds a roll.
Wow.
I can throw it on my shoulder and stack it. I don't, but I did this is when I was 25, and I pull up, and there's this fucking big Samoan, he might have been Tongan, Polynesian, whatever he was,
Yeah.
he was big. And he was only about my height, but I'm a big guy, but he's way broader at the shoulders than me. And huge, like, neck and hands and everything. He's like, what's up, brother? I'm like, hey, what's up? I go, I got 30 rolls of this pad, you know. He goes, we're going to put it in this trailer over here. He threw that shit around like it was pillows. 200-pound rolls of padding like it was nothing. Like I never seen. Well, I seen one guy, and you know how we're talking about freaky people. Well, not really, but I'm talking about freaky people.
Yeah, well, no, we are.
I saw this guy. Only one person that might have even done it easier than him. And the scariest thing about it, it was an average-sized guy, and he was about 20. And he threw it around as easy as the Samoan. And I was like, the Samoan made sense to me. My mind, oh, he's a Samoan. He can throw it. But this fucking white guy with like a shitty, like little nothing mustache throwing this shit around as easily as Samoan. I'm like, hey, dude, I go, I've never seen anyone do what you just did with ease. He goes, well, you know, I've always been kind of strong. I'm like, kind of strong? I go, the only person I ever seen lifted as easy as you was Samoan. He goes, yeah, they're pretty big guys, aren't they? I'm like, yeah, and you're strong as them. Like,
well, there's also something about like hillbilly farm boys that don't even have to have any muscle definition or mass or any of that. They just have like whatever, like their tendon strength is just fucking off the charts for some reason.
Well, this guy, he goes, well, I moved here from North Dakota. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. All right.
Like, I just have to say one thing before I forget. No disrespect to Haku, Tonga, whatever the fuck, Meng. I do have to. I have to call into question when I listen to like Ric Flair and some of these guys, Perry Saturn, talk about the guy. I'm sure he was tougher than 90% of those other guys. I have no doubt about that. I remember a few months ago listening to people talk. They start getting crazy with the shit though.
Yeah, they
talk about Brock Lesnar, like who would win in a street. Just stop. Just fucking stop. Granted, like Meng's a tough guy. I'm sure he could beat up most people. And when you talk about human beings, but when you're talking about an NCAA fucking multi-time like fucking Big Ten champion, UFC fucking heavyweight champion, professional fighter, just shut the fuck up and stop trying to convince me even today at 65 years old he would. No, he fucking wouldn't. No. Stop it.
And he did, in fairness to what you're saying to defend you, he beat up a trained Samoan. He beat Mark Hunt up. Mark Hunt's trained.
Brock Lesnar, you mean?
Yeah, Brock
right,
Lesnar.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They're saying Brock Lesnar beat up a trained Samoan. So it's not like out of the realm of possibility that he can't take someone.
No.
But Brock Lesnar is a genetic freak and he's on steroids.
But also, but my point is, I'm tired of listening to like the pro wrestling guys try to legitimize some of their tough guys as though they can beat up fucking like Anderson Silva or Fedor Emelianenko or Brock Lesnar. Dumb. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, stop.
Another one is Andre the Giant. Nobody like, dude.
Andre the Giant would have been flatlined by fucking what's that British dude's name? James Thompson.
Yeah,
James Thompson would have annihilated him just the way he did Giant Silva, and he's not even that good of a fucking fighter.
Yeah, you can't. A trained fighter will beat up a guy that just because he's big and strong. Trained like UFC 1 proved that, right?
Right.
UFC 1 proved there was guys that were 600 pounds. There was guys that were 300 pounds. There was Samoans, Tongans, sumo wrestlers, steroid white guys. There's a whole gamut,
Boxers
right?
with one glove.
Boxers with one glove.
Art Jimersons.
And like when it comes down to it, and I hate to say it because he's a total prick, but the toughest man ever lived is John Jones. No one can beat him. I think he beats the fuck out of anybody that's ever lived because he's proven it. He beat up Daniel Cormier, who's now the heavyweight champion. I don't think John Jones can be beat by anybody. I don't like him. And I don't like the guy.
Any given day, there's somebody out there that can win. But, I mean, and you're also talking about MMA rules. I mean, yes, but I know what you mean, and I agree with you. I mean, and you're talking about physical gifts. I mean, the dude's like so we're segueing into something totally different.
Yeah, and he's hard. He's long. He's hard to take down.
My point is, wrestling's great, and we appreciate all these guys, and a lot of them are tough guys. Let's not fucking make any mistakes. That look, we saw what happened to CM Punk. Okay, the reason that fucking Brock Lesnar had success is because he had a fucking amateur background. Like in real wrestling.
So he had the same base of every champion that's there right now.
And hey, you want to make the argument? The Steiner brothers, I'm sure they would have if they had tried.
Well,
they would have done well. You know, and there are legitimate tough wrestlers. I'm sure Tonga, fucking Meng, Haku. I'm sure if he had like trained and disciplined, maybe he could be the fucking toughest dude ever to live. don't make these fucking. I get tired of listening. I don't know. Some of you mentioned Ric Flair earlier, and I get tired of listening to him fucking. Oh yeah, when I was fucking young, I'm gonna tell you all these stories, and the guy's full of shit.
Yeah, in terms of real fighting, we're talking. It's a separate thing.
I feel like. Well, no, I'm not gonna. Never mind.
I just saw something that made me remember. Remember Mike Tenay, the announcer?
Yeah, what happened to him?
I hated that guy.
I hated
Didn't
him.
he
with
work
a
for
fucking
TNA
passion.
for a while?
He was terrible.
Did he?
He
might have.
And we're Mike Tenay.
I hated Mike Tenay. He was
I
the
can do that
fucking
fake
worst.
announcer voice.
Shivani wasn't great, but Shivani was better than Tenay.
Shivani was miles better than Tenay.
I could
So
be
bad.
I could be that type of announcer. All right, we're here at WWE. Like, you can do that voice. Any of us can do that.
It was
voice.
even worse than what you just did.
Yeah,
it was
it was
more
so
annoying.
bad.
Was it really
and
worse
grating
than that?
yeah.
That's me trying.
I don't
to
think
be
you.
bad.
I don't think you had the right pitch.
And we're back.
I don't think I could do it.
No.
Bobby Heenan, though, on the other hand,
Bobby Heenan was
is the
greatest
best of all
announcer
time.
ever.
And now you could some might argue that like JR or
Yeah.
I would say in terms of announcers, Bobby Heenan's top. Honestly, I don't even think JR is 2. I think Gorilla Monsoon is 2.
I was going to say Gorilla. Thank you.
I think Gorilla Monsoon, and then Vince McMahon, and
Vince
then
McMahon is
JR.
a great announcer.
Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan together in the 80s
Yep.
was magic.
Yeah,
I loved Heenan and Gorilla because the way
Heenan
they
and
worked-
Gorilla, yes, actually, no, that's what I meant to say.
Heenan
not,
and
not
Gorilla with the
McMahon.
way they worked off each other and stuff with primetime wrestling.
The only thing
Dude.
I'll tell you, like Shivani, we make fun of him in certain ways. He was the best at acting absolutely disgusted.
Oh my
This makes me sick.
I know, he-
He
said it earlier. He's
he
like,
would get so mad about
I don't
it.
know, man. I kind of liked when Heenan would go off on his tangents, and then Gorilla would just, "Will you stop?"
oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
actually,
like,
that's a good
"Will you
point.
stop?"
Yeah, he was good at it. But another thing was a great moment, a Heenan moment, when when the Nasty Boys were fighting. I'm laughing thinking about it. They were fighting Public Enemy, and like they were the ECW type, like going wild and everything. And they go to grab a chair. And they made a kid get up, and he goes, "Oh my God, he's going to hit him with a kid!" I forgot
about that.
I had an asthma attack while laughing at that. Heenan was so great, man.
Rest in peace,
Think
Bobby
about-
Heenan. Was...
Think about that comedic timing, though. Right then, and there, he's going to hit him with a
He
kid.
was the best manager. He was the best announcer. He's the best.
Yeah, no, Heenan is fucking legendary. I'm trying to think of. You had your classic managers from back in the day. You had Bobby Heenan, you had Jimmy Hart, you had Scary Sherry, Sensational Sherry,
Yeah.
obviously Sherry Martel, Brother Love, Paul Bearer, all these.
Dude, I forgot Sherry Martel and Rick Martel.
Yeah,
No, I remember Rick Martel, but I forgot about the relation. Oh my god.
yeah.
That's another guy, dude. Rick Martel as the model.
Yeah.
Remember how annoying that was?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
had the
Arrogance.
the cologne right to your
Yeah,
face. But dude, that guy was a good talker, in shape. He could wrestle.
Good worker.
Never got a good push.
No. What was his team? He was
Strike
Rick Martel
Force.
and was
Tito
it
Santana.
Tito Santana? Yeah, right.
They were
right.
a fantastic
Yeah,
tag
they
team.
were a good team.
But Rick Martel himself, when he became the model, was good on the mic, could work, had a gimmick, and he never got any push.
Well, I don't think that with a character like that you're designed to be kind of a mid-carder. The more ridiculous characters, I mean, he Intercontinental Champion, which I believe he was at one point.
He was at one point, but
you're never going to get beyond that with a character like that.
yeah, but then you look at someone like a ravishing Rick Rude, who the same thing, in shape, didn't have the looks really. He was just a goofy looking dude with that stash, and then. But I don't know if he worked as well as Martel, but he was like 4-time Intercontinental Champion.
But his gimmick was, I don't know, the elaborate like tights and shit.
Yeah,
and
the
that
kissing
dude
a
had
woman.
a physique that was like not to get like borderline homo or whatever,
No homo.
but like, dude, his physique was like a different level than
Yeah.
a lot of people. Like he had that thing with the Warrior where they did the pose down. Now Warrior was way more jacked, big size wise. But like Rick Rude had like a really weird physique. Like he was like really long and stringy, but like super fucking shredded. And Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, he had that whole thing going.
He
at
did
the
have the
time.
Magnum
That was
PI
the
thing
80s.
going on.
And another thing, we talk about tough guys. Rick Rude was another one of those guys who had that reputation backstage for being one of the guys. Like supposedly He knocked the shit out of the Warrior when they had their little feud going for being too stiff with him. Like, fuck you, man. What are you trying to do? Fucking kill me out there? Went back there and embarrassed him in the locker room, beat the fuck out of him, and scared him half to death. Supposedly, Hogan, I think they wrestled maybe once, but Hogan didn't want shit to do with him, like, in the ring. Because he was
an extremely volatile personality.
Right.
He was not a nice man, according to a lot of people. Like, he was friendly. If he liked you, he was.
With, like, Kurt Hennig, the Minnesota guys.
But if he didn't like people, he could be a real pain, and people really didn't want much to do with him. But he was buddies with the Minnesota guys and the Steiners, all like the tough guy bros.
Demolition.
Yeah, all the tough guy bros that were legit
Demolition,
tough. They kind of had their own crew, and he didn't fuck with them because they were his buddies.
Right.
And but I guess Hennig was like a big shit starter, though. He would like be in Rude's ear and like, hey man, and kind of get him going.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, like
No.
But
he was one of those guys too, where honestly, I mean, we're kind of all over the place right now, right?
That's
When
fine.
talking
We're
about the podcast,
fine.
We're just talking about
well, we love pro wrestling. This is probably the
pro
only one we're
wrestling
ever
in
gonna
general
do.
throughout, like its heyday in terms of how we viewed it as 40-year-olds. But like, I think Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. Especially when I was a kid, I always liked him, right? But like as an adult, looking back and understanding more of how that business works, I have a bigger appreciation for him now than I did when I was a kid because he would oversell a lot of moves, yeah. But dude, we were talking about Sting
When they take
earlier.
the head and
total
ram it.
fucking package. Why do they call the fucking Lex Luger the total package? That dude was a fucking bodybuilder. Fucking Kurt Hennig, Steve Borden. Bret Hart, not Bret Hart. He didn't have the mic skills.
No.
But these guys were the total package, though. Like, fucking good behind the mic. Fucking dude, Kurt Hennig was amazing on the mic, like, for that character. Impressive in the ring.
And a legit athlete.
Yeah,
legit.
big. He was like 250, he was like a 250-pound guy,
Well,
right?
he was
bigger than Bret Hart.
a legit 6'2". They listed him at 6'3" or 4", but he was 6'2", 250, and he remember they did that thing where he was with Felton Spencer.
Yeah, the basketball player.
Basketball, and Felton Spencer said in an interview, when Hennig passed because they became friends because Minnesota he played. And he said he's 6'2", 250. He goes because this wasn't on the camera because it should have been. He freaking did a baseline drive and just dunked. A 250, 6'2" white guy to just like do a baseline dunk, pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah,
Kurt was a legit athlete,
Yeah.
also a legit wrestler, amateur style,
Right.
state champ. So he was that gimmick, Mr. Perfect. The reason they came up with that because when the guys did like drunken games like darts, bowling, like how you would do if you were on the road. Like say we were on the road for 300 days a year, like the shit he always won.
Wow.
So that's why Mr. Perfect became a gimmick because he always and even Brock Lesnar, who came along at the end of Hennig's career, said Kurt always had a horseshoe up his ass. We'd play ping pong with him, and he always fucking won, and it drove me nuts.
And then that was the part of that flight from hell or whatever when Kurt decided, I could take you, and decided to try to fight Brock Lesnar on the plane.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and they open up I guess an emergency door or something in the mid-flight. The plane ride from hell, and supposedly when they were like they weren't fighting, they were
tussling.
It was close because Kurt knew how to actually wrestle.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
He knew how to wrestle.
Some of the legit guys, if we were talking about it, the guys that I always assumed would be kind of legit would have been him. You would think Goldberg, but I don't think actually.
Jericho choked
him up.
Jericho choked him out.
Yeah,
in a fight.
Steiners, either one of them.
Yeah.
We obviously know like the Haku's,
Steve Williams
Perry
was
Saturn,
but he got knocked out by Bart Gunn.
Bart Gunn, has a fucking piston for a fucking left hand or whatever.
Man, when he tried to fight Butterbean,
he didn't have the chin to take on Butterbean at the time, but I always was curious about the Steiners, either one of them. I remember they had the little feud when Tank Abbott showed up in WCW, and they had him at ringside or whatever, and Mean Gene, I think it was Mean Gene, tried interviewing Tank Abbott before Tank was like a wrestler in WCW. He was like a spectator, and he's talking shit about the wrestlers, like, "Yeah, what are these guys doing?" Blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, Rick Steiner fucking comes out of nowhere, and supposedly you can YouTube it, and people still on YouTube, if you look up the video, people are fucking debating on as to whether it actually happened or not, whether it was a work, whether it was legit. It was pretty clearly to me a work.
Yeah.
But they sold it. Rick Steiner and Tank Abbott. Like, Rick Steiner just comes out and starts talking shit, and they both start throwing right hands. And that was one of those things. Again, we're talking about the Monday Night Wars. WCW sold the doubt. We all know it's fake.
Yeah.
But there were
Are they
elements.
really
Of
mad?
course, there's always elements that could be real. Like, oh, maybe these two guys really don't like, because there's no
lots
doubt
of
about
that.
it. There are
yeah.
instances where guys don't like each other.
It's a point you brought up to me, and I never noticed it at the time, but I looked back at some of their matches, and you were right. I remember you told me, he goes, "Hey, dude, do you want to see guys get mad at each other during matches for real? Watch X-Pac or Sean Waltman and Jericho.
Yep.
They get mad, and they get mad and start fucking hitting each other.
Yeah.
They get mad for real.
X-Pac hated Jericho because he was stiff. He sold his move. Like, you had to fucking work around his fucking clotheslines and shit. Like, he wasn't ginger. He's tough.
Yeah, and they would fight.
Yeah, and X-Pac did not like that, and a lot of it I think was jealousy too, because Jericho's bigger than Walton, but similar like style in terms of like aerial and all that.
He was kind of a weirdo, but he was small, but there's no doubt that X-Pac was a good wrestler.
Oh, no,
he was a really good
not.
wrestler,
No doubt.
And of course, they would have that natural competitiveness,
Right.
I
think in a real fight, Jericho fucks him up.
Oh, sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But like X-Pac, to his credit, was like, "I'm gonna hit you back. I'm gonna get mad. Whatever." They didn't like each other.
No.
Yeah, but that was one of those things about WCW that I always, especially when you start introducing. Now, obviously, WWF for a while had Ken Shamrock. They tried
Severn.
working him into it. But I was a bigger fan. I always hated Ken Shamrock. I never was a fan of him.
Yeah.
Not in UFC, not in WWF, never. But I liked the fact that WCW brought in Tank, because Tank was that, pardon me. Got fucking gas, man. I'm fucking drinking all this beer. Ate 3 taco and cheese taquitos before I came over, so acid reflux. Anyway,
I'm out of Tums too. Sorry.
no, I'm good. I wouldn't eat them if you had them. But like, boy, where the fuck was I going here? I'm talking about Tank. Yeah.
Tank.
I love Tank in UFC. I love the bar brawler that can fucking knock the fuck out of people. I mean, he loses most of his fights, but if he lands a good right hook on you, you're fucking toast. I liked that WCW brought him in. That was one of the things. I don't want to say that added legitimacy, but like there were moments. Guys like him, Bam Bam Bigelow. There were a lot of rough and tumble guys in that company at the time, and again, like I said, I'm going to reiterate that it was more about the wrestling. It was more about the match than it was about the mic, and there were always moments that to me there was intrigue. Like they sold it better. Okay, that's what I guess I'm trying to say.
Absolutely,
the wrestling, the combat. It was sold better in WCW during their heyday than in WWF.
No,
Ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
They just showed Val Venus on the screen too.
I know. That was another. Remember, there was a big build up to a reveal, and the guy like in the ring wasn't very good. I just was not impressed. He was a good like talker, and his character was good, but man, I didn't really care how
He wasn't a bad wrestler. Just he didn't have anything special. He's
basic.
He was very basic. I just didn't like him. I don't remember that guy, Beaver Cleaver.
I think that's it. He was part of the Headbangers, like Chaz or something, and then he became that character.
Man, I saw somebody on the screen earlier, and I can't remember who it was. Oh, they showed Disco Inferno.
Yeah, I was right, Chaz.
Oh, he was Chaz.
Yeah, Disco Inferno.
But they had a lot of guys who were basically just jobbers. That in WCW, like him, Das Wonder Kid, Alex Wright.
Yeah, Alex Wright, yeah, from Germany.
From Germany, totally from Germany. Listened to European techno.
Did you ever hear the story about him?
No, I don't think I did.
What was? Remember, he became Berlin.
Yeah,
I'll let you make your point. I'll tell you about it.
I don't remember what my point was. Tell me about Das Wonder
Okay.
Kid, Alex Wright.
They, for some reason, they decided not to go with this, and I don't get it. Maybe they were just being a little bit over touchy, but
Okay.
the whole point of Berlin and the wall and all that. Remember, he had the wall as his bodyguard.
Oh yeah,
They were going to be anti-Semitic Germans that were there to attack Goldberg. who's
oh my
Jewish.
God, I did hear that before.
Yeah,
I
so that whole
completely
point
forgot
of
about
bringing
that.
Berlin along and the wall, they were going to be a antithesis to Goldberg because he's Jewish.
Yeah,
That would have been a fucking train wreck if they went with that.
yeah, that wouldn't
That
work.
would have been like 'cause Alex, like they said, Alex Wright was like back. I ain't doing this. Like he's German. He's like he did not want to do it. He's like and that guy that played the wall. He's like, I don't think this is a good idea, guys. And just they knew that backlash are coming. The wrestlers didn't want to do it. And like Goldberg talked to Alex Wright. He's
Yeah.
like, Bill, I don't want to do this, man. You know, like you
That's
think about if
bad.
you're a German guy and they like we want you to play this guy that from Germany.
We
that
want you to
don't
play
like
a Nazi,
Jews.
basically.
Yeah, you're a and like yeah, it didn't work out. Thank God.
That makes
But
me-
it would have made great TV. It would have
I wonder. Then that's another terrible idea. But that seemed to be kind of what was going on with WCW. You know, they won the ratings for so many weeks in a row, and then it started going downhill, and the mismanagement. And everybody said that it seemed like they didn't know what they were doing. Even on the day they were making the show, they might not know what they're doing when the show started. Like Booker T said it many times. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing tonight. I'm here, but he had no clue
Yeah.
what he's doing, what his storyline was going to be.
Well, again, it goes to what Matt was talking about. Is like they had too many cooks in the kitchen, and they had all these guys. They had the lunatics run the asylum. The wrestlers had too much power. There was
Yeah.
too many bookers. There was Hall and Ash. There's
Yep.
this guy. In reality, I don't support dictatorship, but I do like that the WWF or E always had Vince McMahon was the final say.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it keeps the people lined up.
And I will say that kind of going to the point that I was making just a few minutes ago, where you didn't know what, as far as the legitimacy and stuff, like, or you didn't know what kind of real legitimate feud or fight might like pop up on Monday Nitro. A lot of that was due to the fact that nobody knew what the fuck was going on.
Exactly.
There was chaos,
That's-
right? So yeah, there were maybe some perks to that, but ultimately it led to their downfall, and it was more of a bad thing than a good
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
It was fun at first to just let the guys do their thing and be creative. You do a great wrestler is always himself, and I told you about how sometimes like when I'm yelling at Kojak or Frank, it's part of my personality, but it's a level 10. It's not really how I am in daily life, but I'm trying to be funny or whatever. It's level 10.
Yeah, you're working.
Yeah, I'm doing a work.
You're doing a
a work, but it's still me. Still how I feel.
Yeah.
A good wrestler is still how he feels, but times 10.
Well, sort of. It depends.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
I don't know that Max Moon was actually that guy's
Well, no,
personality.
what I'm saying is this, and Cornette and a lot of the guys say this, you got to go with what the guy has.
Right.
And it has to be something that, but if you have a guy and that's not a certain personality who's not a natural heel, and you make him a heel, it's going to suck.
Unless he's a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
Which is very few of them.
Or a guy that's a nice guy for real, and then you try to make him bad, or a guy that's actually a dick. They talk about Scott Steiner. Wrath, the guy you're talking about in his shoot interviews, he said, my problem with Scotty is for years, they always try to make him a good guy, and he was a natural asshole. That was just his personality, is to be a dick.
Yeah, the NWO Scott Steiner was way more Scott Steiner than the fucking Steiner brothers, rah-rah.
And he said, and then when he goes, one of the mistakes why we went out of business, and we're getting to the end of the Monday Night Wars, is Scott, like they didn't put the title on him when he was the guy that was the fucking biggest dick and an asshole, and even though his promos he sucked, he
didn't though. He was it was so bad. It was awesome though.
Yeah.
Like,
but he flubbed the words and all that. But it's still, you got the vibe he's not a nice person.
Right.
You know?
That Scott Steiner math video that they
but here's the thing though, and I don't mean to cut you off. I feel like a dick, but
No,
like
you're not cutting me off at all.
Way to go, Steiner.
here's the thing though. Yeah, he would flub words and shit, and that was funny when he did it. But he was also legitimately funny at times. Like and his voice, like he had a good, huge like personality. And like I remember when he did go to WWE and they fucked that whole thing, but like they had he feuded with Triple H for a little while there, and right before they bought out WCW, they brought Steiner in and all that. It was right before that was the point where Triple H went from Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the blue blood aristocrat, whatever, 234 pounds, to Triple H, the 275-pound fucking all of a sudden my arms are fucking 22 inches, and I'm a fucking beast.
A little bit of chemical.
Right. But he was like swole as fuck. And then all of a sudden they buy out WCW. Now here comes Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner was known for being like Big Papa Pump.
Yeah, way bigger.
Got the biggest arms in the fucking world, 26-inch biceps and all this shit. And so they feuded, and they had bench press competitions. They had pose downs. And I remember that was actually an entertaining bit because Triple H, as huge as the fuck he was, they had that little fucking bodybuilding pose down on Monday Night Raw. And like there was a point where like Triple H fucking did one of his poses and Steiner stepped in front of him and his whole fucking arm covered Triple H's face.
Yeah.
And it made me laugh. It was a good feud, and I don't know, like they just shit the bed with it. And I mean, yeah, Steiner doesn't have the mic skills that Triple H does. But I think whether it be WWF, whether it be WCW, the right management, the right people pulling the strings could have done a lot more with Scott Steiner than was ever done with him.
Well, Scott Steiner, part of the reason he's so bitter in all his shoot interviews, why he hates everybody, he had multiple people in his way along the career, and a lot of people that even don't like Steiner, because he's not a nice man, said he got cock-blocked several times. Ric Flair didn't like him. When Sting got hurt, Sting had like a major like knee injury. They needed an opponent for Flair. Flair hated Scott Steiner. Hated him. Scott Steiner was going to be Flair's opponent. Like I'm talking about the young Scott Steiner that could do
from
flips.
The Steiner brothers.
Super athletic. Super athletic. Best in-ring guy. One of the best ever.
Yeah.
And Flair fucked him over. Then Hogan fucked him over. The NWO Hogan wanted to be the champ, even though Steiner was. Then he goes to WWF. Fucking Triple H didn't like him. Mm-hmm. He was one of those guys that probably because of part of his personality, no one would ever like hand the torch to him. He just never got that torch.
I think people didn't. He was a volatile personality, and again, going back to what I was saying earlier, he could fuck some people up. Who do you think would win a fight between Triple H and Scott Steiner, or Ric Flair and Scott Steiner, or Hulk Hogan and Scott Steiner would fucking tie their arms behind their fucking skull and like make them fucking cry.
Well, did you ever hear the Vince Russo talk about Goldberg and him?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to lose to him because it's not realistic. All right, you go ahead and tell him that.
No, he didn't say that. He told Vince Russo, he goes, if it were a real fight, I wouldn't lose. And Vince Russo goes, you go tell him that.
Yeah.
You go tell him that, and you come back here.
Right.
Because Scott Steiner was not a national champion, but a 3-time All-American, which is top 5.
In the Big Ten.
Brock Lesnar saying that might have credence. Like, maybe. But even then, dude, I mean, honestly, that would have been I'd be really curious to see, a prime the Scott Steiner versus Brock Lesnar.
The Steiner brothers in their prime trained? Fuck, man.
Scott Steiner could potentially beat Lesnar in a scrap.
They were something special physically. There's no doubt about it.
My favorite.
What is this, New Jack? Is that New
That's
Jack or
New
Bad
Jack,
News
and he
Brown? I
fights-
can't tell.
Fight some old dude, Gypsy
Oh yeah,
Joe.
So we're looking at. We got a TV running in the background with like some like YouTube pro wrestling stuff going on to kind of help influence us here. And we got a guy with a skullet headbutting Bad News Brown.
Joe. He's an
Gypsy
old
Joe.
dude.
Is that ECW? That's Gypsy
No.
Joe
That's in a like a freaking.
That's a gym or something.
And it gets brutal because New Jack is legitimately insane.
Oh yeah, he's a fucking
and he tries
terrible
to,
person.
he stabbed a guy 6 times during a match with an actual knife to kill him.
I think I remember seeing this.
And then this old guy pisses him off. This old like Native American looking guy, and he tries to kill this guy. And look, it's not kind of a work. He's really mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, New Jack is a freaking legit crackhead.
Yeah.
Like an asshole.
Yeah. ECW had a few of those guys.
They had real ass. Remember the Balls Mahoney?
Balls Mahoney. Where do you think Stones Malone comes from?
Yeah. Well, that guy said in an interview, just as casual as we're talking, he goes, well, when I was on drugs, I was into demonology, Satanism, devil worship, and he's like talking about like it's like just part of his life. How we talk about our like going to a racquetball thing or.
I have to throw that out there since we're on the subject because I don't think I've ever been in a conversation on a podcast or in a YouTube video or anything where Balls Mahoney ever came up. But that's where Stones Malone came from.
Well, there you go.
Balls Stones. And originally it was Stones McKenzie because I liked the name Mahoney.
Yeah.
But then because I always thought of like Steve Guttenberg from Police Academy and Mahoney. And then I was at Blockbuster Video when they were still around. And then there was the VHS or DVD, Malone, Burt Reynolds. I thought it was like the best DVD cover I ever saw. It just said Malone, and it had Burt Reynolds with bleeding from the fucking kidneys, holding a shotgun, blasting it. And I thought that was just the best DVD cover. So I'm like, Balls Mahoney, Malone, Stones Malone. That sounds great. That's why. That's where Stones Malone came from. For those of you who might be interested,
That's
part ECW wrestler, part Burt Reynolds.
Your origin story.
That is
pretty good.
My origin story is tied to wrestling.
Yeah.
My backyard wrestling days. I always lost. That was my gimmick. I never won.
Yeah.
It's like, and I wasn't a jobber. I would always beat everybody up and then lose.
Somehow at the end you would lose.
Yeah, I would always screw it up. That was my gimmick. Like I could throw everybody around and then at the end somehow mess it up.
Someone throws a banana peel in the fucking trampoline.
What was you used to say? Because The Undertaker was from here, but you, Lord Deathspit, was from
Hell's Pastures.
But The Undertaker was from where?
Death Valley.
Death Valley, and we said, yeah.
I'm from Hell's Pastures.
Hell's Pastures.
I remember then you would be the ring announcer, and then you would wrestle me in the next bit. You'd be the ring announcer in one, and then the next bit, you're the guy fighting me, and you were like, from the pastures of hell. And you just take your glasses off, and then you'd be fighting me.
Yeah. Was there anybody in our generation that didn't have their own like family wrestling league?
I don't know.
I don't think
so.
there was. I think if you were born anywhere from 1978 to like 1983 at least, and I only say that because that's where we're all like that's the generation we're all part of. I think you probably had you had your own little family wrestling league with your cousins.
Yeah,
because I know
Absolutely.
I did.
We were called GCW.
Yeah, GCW.
I had the good fortune of being the oldest. Now my cousins, I'm 5'8", $160, 65 at the best.
And they're all like 6'3".
My cousins are 6'5", 240. You know, 5'11", 260. Like they would all like bend me in half now. But at the time, I was 12. They were 8.
You could still beat them though.
So. I remember that's where I learned how to like apply the Boston Crab to people, and
yours sounds way more technical than ours ever got. Then
we would all put each other in all the moves we'd watch to see how much they actually hurt, and the Boston Crab was the most painful move.
I like wrestling Craig because he was small at the time, and I could do my gorilla press and like power moves.
Yeah, I never.
Me and Brian couldn't do any moves to each other. We were too fucking fat.
It was terrible.
But
you had the death rattle.
I want to show you the death rattle.
It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt.
Here's
real
my
bad.
finishing move.
So I'm gonna. Wait, hold on. Before we do this, who's gonna narrate this? Because this is audio, no video.
Well, you don't even have to stand up. The death rattle is this devastating move where I go like this.
Down on one knee, slapping a guy between the knees.
Death rattle, and then their
My knees are broke. I can't do anything.
And then they beat me anyway.
Wow, that's
and then
incredible.
I had a reverse power bomb.
Reverse power bomb
called Death on a Stick.
How does that work?
Death on a stick power bomb. I forgot about that.
Well, instead of grabbing them from the where you put their head,
Put their head between your
they're
your
more
legs.
to your side.
Didn't you almost drop Craig on the table saw?
Oh no, I almost dropped myself on the table saw.
Oh, that's right. You almost hit the table saw.
Well, Craig threw me, and I slipped for real. And then there's a video of me panicking because I was like, and I almost hit my face on the saw.
Yeah, it was bad.
But yeah,
we weren't safe at all.
And then I gorilla pressed him into a fucking fluorescent light, and I almost broke. I thought it was gonna bust because then not a fluorescent light backyard, right? Like a fluorescent light that was lighting up where we were.
It was winter. It was winter, so we were in the garage.
Yeah.
One that was lit.
Yeah, but it was horrible. I have all that. I have all the tape.
God bless America.
Yeah, and then
you can say what you want about America, but American fucking pro wrestling, I don't give a fuck. Look, I give the fucking Mexicans and Japanese their props. Like I said,
yeah, they're
fucking,
good.
WCW gave it to them. But there's a certain thing about like American pro wrestling culture that like you just. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I've been drinking, all right?
That's okay.
I should probably stop. But, hey, I think that makes a little bit of a fucking man out of you when you're fucking 9 years old and, like, throwing your fucking cousins through fucking fluorescent lights and shit.
Well, I had an idea
shapes
for a movie.
it puts hair on your chest.
The funny thing, you said like 9 years old. We were like 19.
Oh, God.
No, this is
kids.
like 19 and 20 years old.
Oh.
I'm talking about this is.
Oh, you guys were, like, really trying to do this shit.
Well,
No, the era.
No, there was a lot of those people, too. I wasn't one of them.
about
I'm talking when I was, like, 12. And
This is
the
during
era
this
that this was going on. That we're talking about the Attitude Era. We were mimicking it.
It was, okay, so you guys were doing this shit during the Monday Night Wars, not during, like, the fucking,
we were,
80s.
We were not.
Yeah.
We were not. We were
okay.
not just observers. We were participants.
Okay, so yeah, see, my generation of wrestling, family wrestling, it started in like 1988, 1989, and I wasn't really giving a fuck about actually wrestling my cousins in 1999.
Yeah, no, we're talking 10 years after you did.
Oh, shit, yeah.
I think we were done by 99, but by 98 we were, or 97.
Well, I don't know, Max.
Well, 99's
When
when
we
it
got
all
in high
really
school,
fucking
That
started,
led to
right?
our first band.
That's
Or
what I
no, it
mean.
wasn't.
So
We stopped the wrestling and then did comedy skits. Then we did a fake band that became a real band.
Yeah.
And, it became a joke. And then that's how Scarneck started. We did a fake band that really sucked as a joke. Then became a real band. And our buddy Nick, who actually knew how to drum, he's like, this is hilarious. Do you want me to play drums for it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then we actually played shows as a joke. That was the whole point.
I do got to give a shout out. I have to say, because we're talking about that era, and band friends and all this stuff. There's a few guys that I grew up with that I wasn't really, one of whom I was like actually really close friends with, but I haven't seen him or spoken to him in years. And then there's another guy who I became acquainted with when I joined Writhing, because you're talking about the band thing, who I went to high school with. He was like 3 grades ahead of me, so he was a senior when I was a freshman. We didn't spend a lot of time. Both of whom are pro wrestlers, or at least have done it, and that is Bubba McKenzie, who, fuck, dude, I'll butcher it, but I think, what the fuck was it? His brother's name is Josh Movado. The fucking Mysterious Movado. I don't know if any of that rings a bell for anybody, but they do like local circuit pro wrestling. And are you guys familiar with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla?
Nope.
No, I think that was like a small thing that started in California, but it was like a dude I went to high school with who was taller than me, lanky, about 5'11", $170, maybe 10 pounds heavier than me, but like 5 inches taller than me or whatever. They started some wrestling league and actually they like made some really legit fucking show. They put on some really legit shows.
Like people showing up in the production and everything.
Right, yeah. But the only thing about it was, and so I mentioned these two guys, one of whom might listen to this, the other of whom I know won't. The second guy I mentioned, like I said, he was a nerd. He was like me. He's like fucking scrawny. He wasn't big at all. He was 5'11", but $170. Like no,
nothing.
The guy
impressive.
never hit the gym and fucking like bench pressed shit.
Just a regular
right?
guy.
But he was good behind the mic. He was good in the ring. He had ability. He had athletic ability in terms of like being able to do moonsaults and shit. He went by Excalibur. He was masked. He had like the dreads coming like Max. He looked like Max Moon wearing all black.
Okay.
And then eventually he went into like the commissioner of food and beverage for the shows that they would put on. He eventually gave up and like made way for like the like more buff guys and shit when their promotion got big. But the other guy that I spoke of, Bubba McKenzie, he wrestled as like Drunk the Clown. You guys remember Doink the Clown, right?
Yeah.
Yes. He
Yes.
was Drunk the Clown in like one of the local circuits, and it was like a Doink the Clown ripoff or whatever. But he's a big guy, and he does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He will fuck you up, like for real. Like the guys can actually fucking fight. But he talked about guys like the former guy I mentioned. Like, if you're going to be a fucking pro wrestler, you're going to put on a fucking show. Nobody wants to look at some 160-pound fucking asshole slamming people. Yeah, we all know that, like, if you get the right guy you're working against, like, theoretically, if we both trained in pro wrestling, me, 165 pounds, could technically powerbomb you at 230, 40 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, if we did it right and we rehearsed it the right way, we could give that illusion that I'm so powerful that I could powerbomb you,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
But fuck you, dude. Hit the gym and sell it.
Yeah.
Put the time in your fucking body and do the work to, you know what I mean? There is something to be said for that, because we talked about the Ultimate Warrior earlier and these kind of guys where, yeah, the Ultimate Warrior
Yeah, I know.
could get his fucking ass beat by Brian Knobs in real life.
Sure.
But nobody wants to see that shit. Nobody wants to see some fucking slob that has no muscle definition beat the shit out of some guy who looks like a fucking Greek god, right?
No, exactly.
That's part of the show.
They want the superhero to be the guy that's the
Right.
best.
And so, obviously, when we got guys like Scott Steiner, like Brock Lesnar, and you go, holy fuck, you see the size of that guy? He can fuck, and he can actually fuck you up? Those are the guys that get, like, our attention, right?
Yeah, sure.
So there's like I don't know where I'm going with this, other than there's two schools of thought that I know. I'm throwing names out there that of guys that I know.
That's where you're going.
What am I
You're
saying?
going Heineken with it.
Heineken.
Yeah, I'm going Heineken with it. You know what? I'm just going to put this down because I've
Okay,
gone full fucking Heineken.
I got a question for you. You said Bubba McKenzie.
Bubba McKenzie.
He's a local guy.
Yes.
Did you drive a hearse?
He might. Well, I mean, I don't want to throw out real names. His name's Justin Felix. There's a guy that I know. He's in bands. You know, he's buddies with guys in writhing that I grew up. They were about the same.
I think
age
it's
group.
like, is it the guy that used to work at Hot Hits?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember
Big guy,
him.
fucking.
He did hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we know.
Yeah, I don't know him, but I know exactly who he is.
Okay, yeah. Bumping Uglies.
Yeah.
Bumping Uglies.
Bumping
That's the
Uglies.
guy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I
So,
remember him.
hey, Bubba McKenzie, Justin Felix, if you're listening, I'm fucking throwing your name around.
Is he the one that was most likely or not likely to listen at all?
No, he would be more likely to listen than the other
But
guy.
he-
The other guy will not.
By the
I
way,
haven't talked to him.
Very entertaining guy. Bubba, you were a very entertaining guy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Shout out to and his brother Josh Movado. Josh Felix. He was a grade ahead of me in high school. We went to high school together, and both those guys were in bands. I think
Didn't
Josh
they make the Jerry Springer show?
might have. I
was
don't
on
know.
the-
Fuck if I know.
Dude,
Josh played drums. Bubba played guitar. I remember fucking man. We always had talent shows in high school and shit, and they did some fucking thing where like they dressed up like Kiss and did some shit. I don't fucking know, but actually, his brother. I don't know that Justin still does the pro wrestling thing. He may or may not, but I know that Josh does. And they're fucking good. They're legit tough guys too. They'll fuck your shit up.
Yeah.
I remember I saw a show that their band. I didn't know the band. I didn't know anything about band. I was like pretty young. But I saw them, and he's like, "This is a tribute to the greatest wrestler ever, Mick Foley," and he takes a chair shot to the head,
and
then does a song. And that was at the Wired Frog.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then,
fuck, you're talking back in like 2001, maybe.
Yeah, I was like, it was a long time, and then I didn't know who he was. And I'm like, is that the guy that works at Hot Hits?
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I'm probably getting
That'd
my
be him.
years wrong or time,
No, yeah,
but it was
I'm sure.
definitely him, and he definitely took a chair shot during his set.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
that sounds about right.
Yeah, but I guess before we end it, we'll get into the demise real quick because we were talking about it. The mismanagement of WCW.
Yeah.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. It led to their creativity and greatness, but it led to their downfall because you ultimately need that one guy that's like that says yes or no.
Well, a lot of them who were there at the time also point to the business, the back end business of it, where they were being bought out. Turner was being bought out by Time Warner, and all of a sudden they went from knowing everybody who was part of the show behind the scenes to Bischoff said he walked into a room, there was 13 people, he knew none of them. So it basically got corporate. And when they started not making the money after that, that's when stuff started going downhill, and they were looking for buyers.
Yeah.
It's always the way it is. Something starts getting good, but they're not making as much money as they were. Bottom line, they're going to start cutting money. And that's what they did.
And then there was that.
Because Bischoff was going to buy it. He had a group. They were going to buy it. They had the money. They had the capital. They were ready to buy it.
He was going to be the full owner.
The full owner. And they're like, yeah, you can buy it. He's like, okay, cool. But you won't have a time slot anymore. You have to find a new network. And he's like, no, that's not, it was contingent on them getting that time slot. And they weren't going to show wrestling anymore, basically. So that's when Vince swooped in.
Yeah, and Vince, the thing about Vince, he's got this mentality like he always had to get that last laugh.
Yep.
And his final fucking, and I don't care what anybody says, and I know they honored him in the Hall of Fame and everything, but he always wanted to get he had Sting, he brought him in. You bring Sting in like the ultimate guy from WCW because he's the only one left that was only WCW his whole career, and they fucking had Triple H beat him, and that was fucking retarded.
Yeah.
The Monday Night Wars were long over. Should have done the right thing. Let Sting beat Triple H. That's what they should have done. Because Sting, even when Sting talked about refusing to join the WWE, he said, Vince McMahon, ever they treated me like gold. He said they were so great to me, and they offered me a great contract. No flub bullshit. They offered me real money. Because they wanted Sting. He refused. But years later, they brought him over, and fucking lost. I mean, that's so anticlimactic. Like, you got to let that shit go. Like,
Yeah, Vince won't.
Yeah.
He wanted to kill that last. He wanted that last trophy mounted on his fucking mantle.
Sociopath.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you could have been so much cooler to just like Sting wins, like not WCW wins, Sting himself.
Just Sting.
Yeah, but no, and so what's the point of bringing him? You bring him for he did get hurt.
Yeah.
He got hurt. That's what he didn't leave after that. But they wanted it to first establish that Triple H, our guy, is better. It was just dumb.
Well, and he always had where he was always out. Him and Ted Turner, they hated each other. Ted Turner didn't care shit about Vince. It was Vince didn't like Ted Turner
because he was funding it.
But even the last 3 years of Nitro, Turner didn't own the company anymore. Time Warner had bought everything out. He was a figurehead. He didn't own anything. And they said he finally bought him out. He finally took out Ted Turner. No, he didn't. Ted Turner was gone 3 years before that.
Yeah, and then he brought Bischoff over and totally like embarrassed Bischoff for like months, and it was. And the thing that got to me really pissed me off about like, I understand that Vince has the wrestling mind. He had the better vision, and he'll always be wrestling what it is. But they always had this, like him and even Jim Ross, who I respect, and a lot of these guys, like, they always talked about putting us out of business. They were just talking about putting us out of business. Well, dude, you put them out of business, and then you brought their guys over and shit on them. So don't fucking whine at me about they wanted to put us. You guys did what you accused them of wanting to do.
And you wanted to put them out of business the whole time, too. You guys were competitors.
Yes.
That's what competitors do.
And they had this crossfire thing because at the time, Bischoff now worked for WWF, or E. And they had a round table thing. And all these guys, it's Michael Hayes and Dusty, and they're all like kind of shitting on Bischoff. I'm like, what the fuck was he supposed to do, guys? Not make WCW win? Come on, man.
And Dusty Rhodes ripping on him. Dude, Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson, the booking, the stuff that they did before Bischoff finally took control and said, this shit sucks, and started changing stuff. It's where you get like what the fuck, Shockmaster and
Halloween Havoc.
It's terrible shit, and they want to blame him for all that stuff, but he's the only one who was willing to change it and make it into the monster it became, at least for a period of time.
And they could go about Dusty was a great wrestling mind, or Kevin Sullivan. All these guys had the. Bischoff was the guy that fucking beat Vince for a couple years.
Can I just say Dusty Rhodes is a fucking dipshit?
Dude, I
just say that?
I didn't like Dusty Rhodes.
He had no fucking physique. I didn't think his ability in the ring was that great.
I have a better body than Dusty
His
Rhodes.
fucking Mike, yeah, he could talk, but it wasn't.
I couldn't understand what he said half the time.
Yeah, who gives a shit about Dusty fucking Rhodes?
I don't know.
I never did.
I always thought he sucked. His theme song sucked. Everything about him sucked. What was that fucking black chick's name that he always had come out?
Sapphire.
The whole package sucked.
Terrible.
Yeah. So in the end,
his sons are way better wrestlers and everything.
Dude, fucking Goldust, I have no problem with him.
no,
Dustin Rhodes,
Goldust
fine.
was a phenomenal character.
Fucking Dusty Rhodes can eat a dick.
Goldust would be real popular now that
What's the other one?
What's the other what?
Kid. Isn't Cody?
Cody.
Oh, I don't know.
Cody
I don't know
Rhodes?
the other. I don't know the third.
I'm thinking
there's
Cody.
Cody Rhodes.
Cody Rhodes is a good wrestler.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about a third. Yeah,
way
Cody
better than
Rhodes.
his dad.
Yeah. Basically they always somehow like WWF, and they always kind of just portray WCW as this evil people that was like trying to put us out of business. Well, motherfucker, you put them out of business for one, and for two, that Bischoff was just doing his job, and they had him on this thing where they all just shit on him. And then Mick Foley's like, well, you said on there that I was average, and said, like, well, what did you guys say? What was the whole thing about wheelchair wrestling? Like, all the WCW guys are old, they suck. You guys said bad shit too.
There was one thing that WCW did that was below the belt, and it was Tony Schiavone, and I forget what year it was. It was 1997 or 1998. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about watching our competition tonight, we're going to give away the ending because it was pre-taped this week.
Yep. No.
That was below the belt.
Yeah,
that
was
was
bad.
fucking shitty.
They said they shit on Mankind at the time. Mick Foley had said something about
Exactly. It was a match regarding Mick Foley. I don't remember the full context of it.
I mean, they've done it a few times before that, but that was the one where all of a sudden you started seeing the signs on WWE where, because they said something about like, oh, that's really going to put butts in the seats, and then you started seeing the signs during Raw the next week, like Mick Foley put my ass in this seat, stuff like that. Yeah. So it sort of backfired on him. That time.
It did. It made him look fucking. It made him look cheap. It made him. It was a low blow.
We had to talk about that real quick, because like April of '98 is like basically when the ratings started going back and forth again after the 84 magical weeks.
Right.
But then a couple months later, on June 27th, 1998, there's a little match called the Hell in a Cell with Mankind and Undertaker.
Yep.
Did you see that match?
I did, but yeah.
That one was where I think, because we watched both, like we said. We flipped back and forth, but we were mostly watching Nitro. And then we watched the pay-per-view, that Hell in a Cell. That match between Undertaker and Mankind, which was like a 30-minute match. Mm-hmm. We saw that, and the next night we're like, no, we're watching Raw from now on. That was the one that changed us, converted us back.
That wasn't what changed me.
If I remember correctly, I have to ask Mike.
That sounds about right. That's for a lot of people, I think, would agree. For me, it was once Russo really started getting involved in WCW.
I think most people would agree with that too.
Yeah, man, I was done, dude. That dude fucked the whole show, dude. I don't know. I'd have to go back and really kind of look. It would take a less inebriated mind for me to go back and really analyze this shit. But I know once Vince Russo got involved in WCW, that's when everything took a shit. Now, is that 100% his fault? I don't know, because maybe it was shit in the bed, and that's why they brought him in an act of desperation to try to fucking make things right. But I do remember when whatever the fuck happened. I don't even remember the match. It might have been Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. I remember when they booked that fucking match, I thought, what? Fuck the Ultimate Warrior. That was an 80s fucking character, early 90s character. Get rid of it. Kill it. And then they brought it back, And I'm like, why are you doing this? This character should be
That was
dead.
the same time. Yeah.
Why? Why?
This character, the demon.
The demon. Fuck. Now that just showed that they were
NWO
lost out of
split in
touch.
two.
Yeah.
Civil
There's too many
War.
people,
No.
and it got worse.
It just diarrhea everywhere.
Well, I was telling him, I think
Yeah, pissed.
because we were, like I said, Nitro first and then Raw, and I think kind of the tipping point back for us was the Mankind Undertaker
Hell in the Cell, absolutely.
Also, on the next night we were watching Raw.
Still
more than
to
we
this day, my favorite match ever.
Well, and that's why
I love
earlier
that
when
match.
We talked about Mick Foley, I said, and Terry Funk, because they're the ones that they were drinking or they're doing whatever, they're having fun, and they decided to just start throwing out outlandish ideas for a match.
Yeah.
And that's where that came from, was that Hell in a Cell match. Like that panel, the ring that or the cage that fell out.
And then they fell on the Spanish announcers.
Yeah. Well,
Or he did.
that part, but the part where Undertaker slammed him through the cage.
Yeah.
That panel wasn't supposed to come loose like that.
Yeah, he wasn't in the sudden stop.
And
You know, the funny thing is, the only person that was seriously hurt during that match was the Undertaker. Even though Mick
he
had
broke his foot.
he broke his fucking ankle and foot and everything to smithereens when he drops down through that panel that wasn't supposed to break.
Yep.
To continue to beat on Mick Foley.
Well, and Undertaker even said when he slammed him through it, he moved. You see him if you watch it. You see him. His foot is on part of the cage, and all of a sudden he moves his foot to the metal crossbars. Because if he wouldn't have, they both would have won through at the same time,
And they've been injured really bad.
really bad. And Vince said that was after the fight backstage. He said, "He's like, I love what you did for the company, but man, that was fucking stupid. We shouldn't have done that."
Yeah.
And Mick Foley didn't even remember the thumbtacks. They had thumbtacks in that match.
Yeah.
He didn't remember the thumbtacks. He's like, "Oh man, did we remember to use the thumbtacks?" And Undertaker's like, "Mick, look at your arm." And he just had thumbtacks in his arm.
The best part too is the when he gets thrown off the top onto the Spanish, and then it was like dead silence. Jim Ross was like, "I want help. I mean it. I mean it."
When Jim Ross was yelling, it's like, "Someone stop the damn match." He was actually asking him to stop the damn match.
But when he said out here, he goes, "I want we need help out here or something." He goes, "I mean it," because he wasn't in character. He's like, "I mean it. Like get somebody out here to."
Vince actually broke character out there too when they started taking him away on the stretcher and stuff. Because he didn't like Mankind, he didn't like Mick Foley. He thought it was terrible, but he actually, that was part of the act. He actually broke character. He's like, "No, don't go back," because he got off the stretcher and came all the way back.
So good.
My favorite part was when they show the crowd and they show his wife and kids in the crowd watching him.
Yeah, they're all crying.
That was all in Beyond the Mat, wasn't it?
yeah, the whole thing
Yeah.
behind the story.
He
thing.
didn't remember having thumbtacks in his arm or anything.
Yeah.
He was messed
I
up.
remember watching that. I went to
tooth.
that was the one time there was some stupid Final Fantasy movie, and then there was the Beyond the Mat that I went. Those are the two things that I went to see in the theater by myself for some stupid fucking reason. And Beyond the Mat. I remember. All I remember of that because I don't. When did that come out? 1999.
99, yeah.
99. That was the first and only time I've ever seen it. But I remember seeing Vince McMahon and Mick Foley sitting in chairs next to each other, getting stitched up, getting their foreheads. "Oh yeah, the fucking trash can hit me in the back of the skull or whatever," and then the fucking chair or whatever the fuck the hell in the cell. Watch them get their fucking gaping fucking wounds stitched up. I have nothing to add to that.
That's right, because I was going to bring that up because Beyond the Mat was the same thing. I've only seen it once. It was really good. Only watched it that one time, and I forgot about it until today when I actually started going back and watching it. Oh, the other thing was the tooth. Remember, his tooth somehow was hanging out of his nose.
Yeah, it went through the nasal cavity.
That was the fight that turned us back because all of a sudden we watched that Sunday, and on Monday we were watching Raw.
Yep, and then Stone Cold had come into his own. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson was.
Yeah.
It all had come.
Mid '98 was the beginning, and then for at least for us, I know they went on for another 3 years, but
yeah, it started changing, and then
by 2000 it was done.
That was done.
There was no more.
Yeah. In fact, because I watched clips of the final episode where Shane came out on Nitro.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't remember it. I don't think I even watched it.
When did WWE buy out WCW? Was it
2001.
2001.
Yeah,
and they were at one of their beach shows.
They always did those spring break shows for like 2
Yeah.
weeks in a row, and Shane McMahon.
Was he there physically in
He
person?
walked out.
I didn't know that.
See, that's why I don't think we even
No, I
watched it
know
at
that.
that
I know
point.
that he was on the screen on Nitro.
Yeah, no, he came out and he was in the ring. And
No,
he was,
I mean Vince was on the screen.
Vince
and
was. Shane was actually there.
Okay,
And that's how I know I stopped watching before that because I don't remember that
I don't
whatsoever.
remember that at all.
But one last thing, though, the person that they didn't even give a chance because he was difficult to deal with was Buff Bagwell.
Yeah,
And at Buff,
man,
and like you were talking about Steiner, and like Steiner and Buff together. I don't care what anyone says on the mic. Just two guys just randomly shitting on people. They were really good at like insulting people.
I always hated Buff Bagwell.
But
hated
when
him
he
with
comes
a
out there
passion.
dressed as Mark McGuire,
yeah.
he's like, "How many could you hit? How many home runs would you hit if you were not on steroids?" He's like, "About 5." It's like,
That was when they were in St. Louis, right?
yeah,
yeah.
it was good.
I thought
They were a
were
good heel
funny.
team.
I thought they
a
were
good heel
funny.
team.
And Bagwell's another guy who probably had potential, and he obviously had a physique, and he was funny, but yeah, he was annoying.
He was really hard to deal with too. They say.
I didn't.
His calf implants.
A lot of my friends, yeah, he went over in a wheelchair because of that. I had friends who really liked. I hated him. I didn't think he was.
I thought he was hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't think he was hilarious. I didn't think he was particularly talented. I thought, yeah, he had a good physique, but I don't care. He's standing. Well, okay, if your biggest claim to fame is that you got a good physique and you're standing next to Scott fucking Steiner. Why do I care about you? Yeah, you're the more personality, right? He's technically better behind the mic than Scott Steiner, but I thought Scott Steiner was better behind the mic because he was fucking crazy. Yeah, he sucked more, but that's why I liked him better. Like, when he put those stupid hillbilly teeth in and start trying to make fun of Ric Flair, and then they'd start falling out of his face, and he would crack his voice and start talking about ridiculous math equations.
When they made fun of the Horsemen, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people viewed it as horribly disrespectful, and it was. But when when Kevin Nash had the bald 4 strands of
Oh my
hair,
God.
and then
I forgot about that.
and he's like, and then he goes, I have average height, average charisma, average athletic ability, but I somehow parlayed it into a wrestling career. That was so great.
You know what? You just made me think of one more thing. I'm sorry. We keep on going.
Keep on trying to end the
We can go all
podcast.
goddamn night. I don't give a fuck.
You were talking about how they tried to give Sting the push, and it just didn't work. A couple times they
Yeah.
did it. 93 was another time they were trying to do that. It was supposed to be Ric Flair was kind of supposed to be, passing the torch. He'd been doing it for probably 40 years at that point because he's so old. But it was Bash at the Beach, and it was supposed to be Sid versus Vader, I believe. Maybe it was the next year. Maybe it was 94. And they needed someone because Sid got fired because he stabbed Arn Anderson
Yep.
in England. Remember that?
Yeah, they stabbed each other for real.
And for some reason, Sting couldn't take the fight, so they had Ric Flair fight Vader and win, and that started a whole new tenure of Flair. And that was the formula that it kept doing. It kept on going back to the same thing at WCW, and that's when stuff started to change, and they gave him a blank check. It was another incident that really changed
Well, the
things.
thing is, people talk shit. A lot of those guys talk shit about Flair, and he stuck around too long. But Flair, like him or not, was consistent. He was there. He was a body that would be there. And like I said, Sting got hurt. Sid stabbing people.
It was funny, though.
No,
they stabbed each other, but Sid's the one that got fired.
Yeah, and,
because he wasn't friends with Flair.
Interesting fact about Sid, you know how we were talking about how Sting could have took Hogan's spot because in Warrior just wasn't. Kevin Nash in an interview said, he goes, I was sitting there. He goes, I had a poll with Vince. This is during the Diesel, Shawn Michaels, the Click era. And even the Click, like Sid, they said, we thought Sid was money. And Sid was with the body and the scare. And they said, hey, Sid. They sat him down. There was going to be a big thing. Tell him, we want to give you Hulk Hogan's boots. We want you to be our guy that's Hulk Hogan. You're going to be the big hero. You're going to. And Sid's like, nah, man, I don't really want to do it. And they're like, what? And he's like, nah, man, I like to be a big vicious heel. That's what I like to do. And he turned down like big pay, big everything.
He sucked as a babyface.
Yeah,
though.
but Sid was
right.
But Sid was right in his assessment of
Yeah.
himself.
he was.
He goes, I just got to be a big
that's
vicious heel.
a terrible idea
he goes,
to make him.
But they wanted Sid to be Captain America.
Yeah, no, that was stupid. I hated that Sid Justice bullshit.
And Kevin Nash was like, fuck, Sid, just take the money. You know, if it don't work, fucking take the fucking money. You know, like, what's up? You know, he's like, but Sid, like, knew where he was at. You know, he knew, like, I'm a big, scary, ugly guy. Just fucking, like, make me be mean and beat people up.
Well,
and Sid turned down a big paying match and a big paying thing. And Buff Bagwell talks about this. This is another great story. He goes, you know why Sid didn't do that match? I forgot who it was with. Where he's going to make a ton. I think it was Goldberg or somebody, and it was going to revitalize his career. He goes, softball.
Oh, yeah.
Sid was addicted to softball. And he goes, motherfucker would miss matches where he'd get $20,000 just to show up to play fucking softball.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. That's insane.
Sid loved softball so much that he wouldn't show up to matches to do goddamn softball.
Never heard that.
I had heard that before.
Sid is an absolute softball addict.
That's crazy. And real quick, we were talking about the 80s stuff because I think that's when all of us kind of, found our wrestling.
Cut our teeth.
Cut our
in the
teeth.
80s.
Thank you. The gimmicks they had in the 80s. Holy crap! You think about it.
Red Rooster.
The Red Rooster.
God.
The Blue Blazer.
Blue Blazer.
But like you had the other ones like
Mantar.
It was so blown out of proportion. It's like the Big Boss Man. He was a Georgia prison guard.
Cobb County, Georgia.
And all he did was kick the crap out of people in prison. It's like it's stuff you can't do now. That was so great there. Mr. Fuji and I can't think who it was. Mr. Fuji and somebody else used to do the skits on Tuesday Night Titan. What was it called? Do you remember the show?
Yeah,
It's like a talk show type thing. But they do skits.
Keenan lit it up on that.
But they would do these skits, and it'd be like just stuff that's totally culturally inappropriate.
Primetime Wrestling is what it was called, I thought.
No, Primetime Wrestling was another one, but they had another one that was like a talk show type.
Right.
Where they
it was
did
on the USA Network, right?
But they did interviews. They didn't really show matches.
Right. There was a studio. Vince McMahon hosted it.
Well, Vince and Lord Alfred Hayes.
Wrestling was always about
I want to say Tuesday Night Titans.
We'll have to look it up after.
Yeah,
wrestling was always about like cultural shit.
Yeah,
if you were Polish, you were exceedingly Polish. If you were a hillbilly, you were a total redneck.
You were a total redneck.
If you were black, you were from the streets of Harlem.
Your theme music always matched your cultural background.
Always. So they don't. That's what I miss about it now. Like everybody's like a shade of gray.
Yeah,
it could be a black guy that is from Compton. It could be a white farmer from fucking Minot, whatever state Minot's in.
One of the Dakotas, right?
Yeah, but they're like basically the same guy. Their personality, and they just go out there. It's I don't know. It's kind of bland.
Speaking of that, I don't think either of you. I don't. No, not speaking of that because this isn't speaking to anything that you just mentioned, but themes, wrestling themes. I think maybe somebody just bring that up.
I did.
Yes,
because it always seems like it's
okay. Good. I'm not going completely crazy then. Jimmy Hart, he wrote a lot of those.
Yeah.
He was responsible for a lot. Even in WCW, a lot of them he took. I guess you could give him credit for if you wanted, but a lot of it was just like a rip off of another. Like Raven's theme was just fucking "Come as You Are."
No, that was
DDP.
No, that was "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Yeah, you're right.
That was "Smells Like Teen Spirit," but Ravens was da 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 da. So there was always some fucking like
or remember
band
the Buff Daddy song. Buff Daddy was Hot and Bothered.
Damn.
Whatever band wrote Hot and Bothered. It was Buff Daddy.
There was so many bad songs.
Yeah,
so many bad songs.
Yeah,
God.
But this is a story of two brothers.
That is one area where I will give the edge to WCW. Never had shit on WWF's themes.
Like, they had the best ones.
You got Gangrel.
Gangrel. Even for the time, the DX song.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that DX band was an absolute Rage Against the Machine ripoff.
Yeah. But I mean, even the classics: Ultimate Warrior, Mr. Perfect, Demolition, Bret Hart, the Hart Foundation,
Earthquake,
all of them. You go down the list, just a bung, fucking Hulkster, dude. I mean, come on, like what the fuck?
Not even just Real American. The song he had before that, just Hulk's theme,
right?
was not a great song. But dude, I did not know this until earlier today. But I was looking up. Do you remember the WWF cartoon Hulk Hogan's Rock and Roll?
Yeah, rock and roll. Yep.
The theme song to that was his theme song in Ring, and it was written by Jim Steinman, who wrote almost all of Meatloaf's songs and Total Eclipse of the Heart.
That totally makes sense. No,
And I did
that.
not think about that.
I never knew that.
And even his Real American song was Rick Derringer, who did like Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo and some other stuff.
And then you got Jericho and Fozzy.
Yeah.
Right,
And then Papa Roach did the theme song to Raw more recently.
I don't like once they started getting real bands involved. Like I didn't.
But they did that though in the 80s. They actually had real bands. They actually had the music
Kind
You know,
in their shows.
Not very many of them.
The Road Warriors had
Cyndi
a rip off of
Lauper.
Iron Man when they were like back in NWA at the time.
Yeah.
You know, like it had like a couple like chord differences. That was pro wrestling, man. The thing is, man, we won't do it for a while, but we got to do like a 80s thing too. We got to get into that one day. But basically, Vince fucking won out because of mismanagement, people doing shit, like too many guys, like it seemed disjointed. You know what WCW, this is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
WCW's end days were like our podcast now, where we're just, hey, this is an idea.
Random
we're
stuff.
talking. That's what happened with the fucking their multi-million-dollar product.
Only more egos involved.
Yeah, and so it just became a shit fest. And Vince, you know, like I said, you can dislike dictators or one top guy or whatever, but the bottom line is if you have one guy that rules with an iron fist, it does benefit in the over time. You know, and but Vince will listen to his people around him too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess at the end of the day, the better product did win, but for a time, I still don't like any wrestling more than I liked the fucking WCW when they were ahead.
Oh yeah.
That for about a year and a half, not the whole. They were ahead the whole time for 84 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah,
but there
I
was about a year and a half where I thought they better, even though they were ahead at some point. They weren't the better product, but
No.
for about a year and a half, my favorite wrestling ever was WCW.
I agree with that.
I still maintain that Scott Hall had he sold the best punches. Like when it came to like the fake punching and stuff, I always felt like Scott Hall sold the best. He would let his like wrist go limp,
Yeah.
and like actually let his hand connect with your face. Like he would turn his shoulder and do it just like a real punch, but
Yeah.
his hand would be
There
like
was no-
limp,
yeah.
so it would never be a closed fist full. But
The Rock Dwayne Johnson's pretty good.
and I felt like he always modeled it after Scott Hall.
Yep.
Maybe.
Go back to Razor Ramon and the way he would like, you know, it's all that fake fucking stomp bullshit, whatever.
Yep.
But like the way that Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, he wrote the book that The Rock fucking read.
Yeah,
from.
I don't know if The Rock ever credited him for his style.
Probably not.
But The Rock, his style is 100% Razor Ramon.
Very similar.
Very
Scott
similar.
Hall is
Even the elbow bands, everything about him. He was from Florida,
If
right?
you asked me,
Yeah, everything.
who I think my personal favorite pro wrestler of all time, Scott Hall. That was my favorite guy.
Okay.
I felt like he's a big guy, very big guy. You know, I mean, 6'6". He's
280.
When he was the Diamond Stud, I think they listed him at 6'9" or whatever. But like a good solid
was a
6'6", bordering on 300 pounds. Very athletic, innovative, good behind the mic, good in the ring. Had a lot of problems, of course. Good character. I always thought he was the far more interesting of the two between him and Kevin and Nash. When it comes to the outsiders, I thought Scott Hall fucking
Without a
fucks
doubt.
Kevin Nash up.
Yeah.
Kevin Nash was funny and all that. Like maybe if there was going to be a stand-up comedy competition, Nash might have taken it. But in terms of in-ring talent,
The funny thing is, I hated both of them. I didn't hate them like for real,
Yeah.
but I always wanted them to lose.
It's a good word.
Like they got heat for me, as they say.
Yeah.
I fucking hated the outsiders, but not for real. But as a fan, I'm like, someone fuck these guys up. So I guess me even knowing that it was a work for them to get heat from me. Like I always, when the Steiner, the only people that really beat them up were the Steiner brothers. Like everybody, they would beat the fuck out of everybody. Even if they lost a match, they'd beat everybody up. The only people that really fucked them up were the Steiner brothers. And Kevin Nash says in interviews, it's because, Robbie and Scotty could fuck me up. For real.
Yep.
So I wasn't going to no-sell them because and he goes, and we're from Michigan, we're buddies.
yeah.
And he's like, so when the Steiner brothers were going, like, yeah, fuck him, get him. Like they got a good reaction on me. I wanted the Outsiders to fucking lose.
Right.
You know, like,
Do you guys want to talk about Conan?
yeah, sure.
No, I don't. I was just joking.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say no.
I started thinking of NWO
Fuck
members.
that.
And one last thing before we end it, the NWO period, and I don't care what anyone says, during the NWO people jumping Macho Man, jumping Roddy Piper, all of it, they had the best fan beatings. Fans would charge a ring and get the fuck beat out of them, and it happened regularly. And then they'd like dim the lights or try to pan the camera away.
All of a sudden, there's out of the peripheral, you see Chris Jericho just pounding the fuck out of some dude in the crowd with a hockey jersey.
Well, you brought up Scott Hall. Scott Hall, some poor guy tried to slide in the ring. Scott Hall stomped on this guy's head like 8 times. He's like, dude. Hulk Hogan beat the fuck out of a couple people.
Yep.
The NWO is the greatest wrestling faction that beat up fans for real ever. They beat the fuck out of a lot of people.
I
They
need looking
elicited
at making
the
a
best
compilation
response.
video of that. There's got to be one out there.
So we need more fan beatings. That's what wrestling's missing today. They're missing delusional fans that get drunk enough to think it's real.
Once they enter that ring, it's no holds barred.
Yep.
NHB, bitch.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
Go
keep
ahead. Well, I don't
extending
care.
this. Who's the guy we talked about earlier with the sparkly mask? The Shadow
Shockmaster.
Shockmaster. That was terrible. But are there any other terrible gimmicks you can think of?
Max Moon is one.
Max
I
Moon.
mentioned him earlier.
Who's got you had a video?
Mantar.
You mentioned the other day in our chat. Dragon Master. Sure.
Oh yeah, the Dragon Master. I have a gimmick account on Twitter as him.
Dude, that was
So
the worst.
bad.
It's just some guy with a dragon mask. Couldn't move. Couldn't see. They had to lead him around by his hand.
Well, there was
'cause he
the
couldn't see anything.
Yeti. The
The
Yeti
Yeti.
was just
Yeah,
a mummy.
The Dragon Master was 7'3".
Do you remember
His-
the stupid egg on Raw?
Egg?
It was the gobbledygooker.
Gobbledygooker, yeah. I remember the
It was Hector
gobbledygooker.
Barrow and the
Oh my
gobbledygooker.
god!
There was Duke the Dumpster Drosy, or whatever the fuck
Oh,
his name
God.
was. That was
And-
stupid.
The Child's Play 9 or whatever came out. It was a Child's Play movie that came out, and fucking Rick Steiner got in an argument with Chucky.
Oh my god!
I don't remember that.
Rick Steiner, and this is Monday Night War era.
Yeah.
And Rick Steiner's like,
I
don't you come down to the ring and you fight me? You know, like how the Steiners like, and it's Chucky arguing with Rick Steiner.
Oh, actually, I just thought of it. The worst gimmick ever is Dennis Rodman. The end.
Yeah, that's the end of the cup. Dennis fucking Rodman.
All right, we'll see y'all next week.
Talking about more wrestling.
We're reaching to Dennis Rodman, and I still feel like Max Moon and Duke Dumpster and the Gobbledygooker are all worth.
Recorded in the pits of Detroit, Michigan. Your ass is listening to Radio Underground.